Home is where the heart is. That's what Grandma Rosemary told Patricia Alvarez every summer they spent in that old mountain cabin. But Patricia would learn that home could also be where your heart gets ripped apart, where ancient laws collide with modern cruelty, and where the most dangerous predator isn't the beast in the woods, it's the one who wears your mate's face. Patricia never asked to be the rejected Omega. She never asked to inherit a cabin on cursed land, and she certainly never asked to discover that her grandmother had been keeping secrets that would unravel everything Patricia thought she knew about pack law, bloodlines, and the thin line between love and possession. Some inheritances come with silver spoons. Patricia's came with silver bullets and a king who'd been waiting a very long time to collect what was stolen from him. Chapter 1. The Plain Daughter. The Silver Pine Pack didn't believe in coddling Omegas, and they especially didn't believe in coddling Patricia Alvarez. "Move faster, Patricia," Kitty McCullough snapped, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the kitchen counter. "The Alpha's birthday celebration starts in 3 hours, and you haven't even finished the appetizers." Patricia kept her head down, her hands working methodically through the pile of vegetables that needed chopping. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool autumn air drifting through the open window. The kitchen of the pack house was her prison, and Kitty Beta's daughter, future Luna, and Patricia's former childhood friend, was the warden who took particular pleasure in her duty. "Yes, Kitty," Patricia murmured, her voice barely audible over the sizzle of oil in the pan. "It's Miss McCullough to you," Kitty corrected, ice dripping from every syllable. "You might have grown up in this pack house, but don't mistake proximity for equality. You're Omega, I'm Beta blood. We are not the same. We used to be friends." Patricia thought but didn't say. There was no point in reminiscing about the childhood days when Kitty had braided her hair and they'd played in the woods together, pretending to be great warriors. That was before Patricia's first shift at 16 revealed the shameful truth. She was Omega, the lowest of the low, the weakest wolf in a pack that valued strength above all else. And Kitty? Kitty had shifted into a beautiful silver wolf, her coat gleaming like moonlight on water. She'd also shifted her allegiance away from the girl who could only produce a small, russet-brown wolf that barely reached the shoulder height of the pack's adolescents. "Patricia." Another voice cut through her thoughts. Tanya Moore, the pack's head Omega and Patricia's direct supervisor, bustled into the kitchen with her usual harried expression. "The Luna wants the salmon prepared with dill, not rosemary. You'll need to start over." Patricia's hands stilled over the cutting board. She'd been working on the salmon for over an hour, carefully filleting and seasoning 12 large pieces. Starting over meant she'd never finish in time. But Tanya, the Luna's written menu specifically said, "Are you arguing with me?" Tanya's eyes flashed yellow for a brief moment, her wolf rising to the surface. Even among Omegas, there was hierarchy, and Tanya had made it her life's mission to ensure Patricia remained at the very bottom. The Luna changed her mind. Or are you suggesting that the Luna doesn't have the right to change her mind in her own pack house? No, of course not. I'll start over immediately. Tanya's expression softened into something that might have been pity if it weren't laced with contempt. "You know, Patricia, if you'd just accept Blake Todd's offer, your life could be so much easier." Patricia's stomach churned at the mention of Blake, the pack's head warrior and a man 20 years her senior who'd been making increasingly aggressive advances toward her for the past 6 months. He'd made it clear that he wanted an Omega mate, someone to cook, clean, and bear his children without complaint. Someone who knew their place. "I'm not interested in Blake," Patricia said quietly, scraping the perfectly seasoned salmon into the trash. "Not interested?" Kitty laughed from her perch on the counter, where she'd been filing her nails and pretending not to eavesdrop. "You're 23 years old, Patricia. You're not getting any younger. And you're certainly not getting any prettier. Blake is offering you security, status, well, as much status as an Omega can have, and you're too proud to accept it." "I'm not proud," Patricia said, her hands trembling as she reached for fresh salmon from the refrigerator. I want what everyone else wants. A true mate. Someone who sees me." The words hung in the air for a moment before both Kitty and Tanya burst into laughter. "A true mate?" Kitty gasped between giggles. "Oh, Patricia, that's adorable. Truly, you think some alpha or even a decent beta is going to look at you and feel the mate bond? You're Omega. The moon goddess doesn't waste true mates on wolves like you." The words landed like physical blows, but Patricia had learned long ago not to let her pain show. She'd learned to build walls around her heart, to make herself small and quiet and invisible. It was the only way to survive in a pack that viewed her existence as somewhere between an inconvenience and an embarrassment. "The salmon, Patricia," Tanya reminded her, already heading toward the door. "And make sure you're presentable for tonight. The Alpha wants all pack members in attendance, even the Omegas. Try not to embarrass us with your presence." As the door swung shut behind them, Patricia allowed herself one moment of weakness. She gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles turning white, and took 3 deep breaths the way Grandma Rosemary had taught her. "When the world feels too heavy, little wolf, you breathe." 3 deep breaths. Then you remember who you are underneath all their cruelty. You remember that blood doesn't lie, even when everyone around you does. Grandma Rosemary had been gone for 3 months now, passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 97. She'd been the only person in Patricia's life who'd ever made her feel valued, loved, seen. Every summer of Patricia's childhood had been spent at Grandma's cabin deep in the mountains, far from the pack house and its suffocating hierarchy. Those had been the best days of Patricia's life. Grandma had taught her about herbs and healing, about the old ways that most packs had forgotten. She'd taught her that strength came in many forms, and that being Omega didn't mean being worthless. But Grandma was gone now, and Patricia was alone in a pack that wished she didn't exist. She'd barely finished reseasoning the salmon when the kitchen door burst open again. This time, it was Lucas Morrison, the Alpha's son and heir apparent. At 27, Lucas was everything an Alpha should be: tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that could shift from warm honey to cold amber in an instant. He was also Patricia's childhood friend, the one person in the pack who'd never treated her differently after her Omega status was revealed. Or at least, he hadn't until 2 years ago. "Patricia," Lucas said, his voice tight with something Patricia couldn't quite identify. "We need to talk." Her heart stuttered in her chest. Lucas rarely sought her out anymore, not since he'd taken on more responsibilities as future Alpha. The distance between them had grown so vast that sometimes Patricia wondered if she'd imagined their friendship entirely. "I'm working," she said softly, not meeting his eyes. "The celebration." Damn the celebration. Lucas crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, his presence overwhelming in the small space. "Patricia, look at me." She did, and immediately wished she hadn't. His eyes were tortured, conflicted, and something else. Something that made her wolf stir for the first time in months. "I'm getting engaged," he said bluntly. "Tonight, to Kitty. My father has arranged it, and I've accepted." The words should have hurt. They should have devastated her. But Patricia had known this was coming for over a year. Lucas was Alpha heir. Kitty was Beta blood. It was a practical match, a political alliance that would strengthen the pack. It had nothing to do with her. "Congratulations," she managed, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Kitty will make a good Luna." "That's it?" Lucas demanded, his hand suddenly gripping her arm. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make her gasp. "That's all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say, Lucas?" Patricia pulled away, her own anger finally rising to the surface. "Did you come here for my blessing? My tears? I'm Omega. Your Alpha heir. This was always how it was going to end." "It doesn't have to." He stopped himself, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Patricia, there are things you don't know. Things about your bloodline, about why you—" "Alpha Lucas." Kitty's voice rang out from the hallway, saccharine, sweet, and sharp as a blade. "Are you in there? Your father is looking for you." Lucas's jaw clenched. For a moment, Patricia thought he might finish his sentence, might finally explain the cryptic comments he'd been making for the past year. But then his expression shuddered, and he was once again the controlled, dutiful Alpha heir. "We'll talk later," he said, already moving toward the door. "After the celebration. Meet me at the north border at midnight. Please, Patricia. It's important." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone with the scent of salmon and her own confusion. What had he been about to say? Chapter 2. The Birthday Curse. The Silver Pine Pack house glittered like a palace carved from moonlight and ambition. Every surface gleamed with fresh polish. Every chandelier sparkled with crystals that caught the light and threw prismatic patterns across the walls. The great hall had been transformed from its usual austere functionality into something fit for royalty, which, Patricia supposed, was exactly the point. Alpha Owen Kane was celebrating his 55th birthday, and he wanted everyone to remember that the Silver Pine Pack was a force to be reckoned with. Patricia stood in the corner of the kitchen, smoothing down the simple black dress that Tanya had provided for the Omega staff. It was plain, serviceable, and at least 2 sizes too large, making her already small frame appear even more diminutive. She'd pulled her dark hair back into a tight bun, knowing that any attempt at beauty would be seen as pretension above her station. Remember, Tanya instructed the 6 Omegas who would be serving tonight. You are invisible. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not make eye contact with anyone above your rank. You serve, you smile politely if acknowledged, and you disappear back into the kitchen. Is that understood? A chorus of, "Yes, Tanya," echoed through the kitchen. Good, Patricia, you'll be responsible for the main table. Try not to spill anything on the Alpha or his guests. Patricia's stomach dropped. The main table meant she'd be serving Alpha Owen, Luna Georgina, Lucas, Kitty, and whatever important visitors had been invited to this celebration. It was the highest visibility position, which meant the highest chance of making a mistake that would result in punishment. Of course, Tanya would give me this assignment, Patricia thought bitterly. She wants me to fail. The evening began smoothly enough. The guests arrived in waves, each more elegantly dressed than the last. Patricia recognized most of them alphas and high-ranking betas from neighboring packs, along with their mates and heirs. The great hall filled with laughter, conversation, and the complex dance of pack politics that Patricia had observed from the shadows her entire life. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, refilling wine glasses and replacing empty appetizer plates with fresh ones. Most guests didn't even glance at her, and the few who did looked through her rather than at her. It was a familiar feeling, one that had stopped hurting years ago. Or so, she told herself. Attention, everyone. Alpha Owen's voice boomed across the hall, and the crowd fell silent immediately. He stood at the head of the main table, his imposing figure commanding respect from every wolf in the room. Luna Georgina sat at his right, her silver hair elegantly styled and her expression serene. Lucas stood behind his father's chair, looking every inch the future Alpha in his tailored suit. Kitty stood beside Lucas, radiant in an emerald gown that probably cost more than Patricia earned in a year. Thank you all for joining us tonight, Owen continued, his voice carrying the natural authority of an Alpha who'd ruled his pack for over 30 years. As many of you know, tonight is not just a celebration of another year of my life, but a celebration of the future of Silver Pine Pack. Patricia's hands trembled slightly as she poured wine into the glass of a visiting Alpha. She knew what was coming. It is my great pleasure to announce the engagement of my son, Lucas Morrison, to Kitty McCullough, daughter of our esteemed Beta. This union will strengthen our pack and ensure that Silver Pine continues to thrive for generations to come. Applause erupted through the hall. Kitty beamed, her hand finding Lucas's, as he placed a ring on her finger, a massive diamond that caught the light, and seemed to mock every Omega in the room, who would never wear such a symbol of love and commitment. Patricia forced herself to clap along with everyone else, her face a carefully neutral mask. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her pain. She would not. The scent hit her like a physical blow. Pine, cedar, something wild and ancient and utterly intoxicating. Her wolf, who had been dormant and quiet for so long, suddenly surged to the surface with a desperation that made Patricia gasp. The wine bottle slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor in an explosion of red liquid and glass that seemed to echo like thunder in the suddenly silent hall. Every eye turned to her, but Patricia couldn't focus on their stares, couldn't process the humiliation of her mistake, because the scent was getting stronger, overwhelming her senses, and her wolf was screaming one word over and over. Mate, mate, mate. Her eyes found Lucas across the room, and she saw the exact moment when the bond snapped into place for him too. His face went pale, his body going rigid as the mate bond, the sacred, undeniable connection that the moon goddess herself forged between true mates, locked into place between them. No, Patricia thought desperately. No, this can't be happening. Not now. Not like this. Patricia, Lucas breathed, his voice carrying across the silent hall. His eyes had gone wide with shock, with horror, with something that looked terrifyingly like recognition. She's clumsy, Kitty interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. She stepped in front of Lucas, blocking his view of Patricia. Alpha Owen, I apologize for this disruption. The Omega will clean up her mess immediately. But Owen wasn't looking at the broken glass. He was looking at his son, and his expression had gone from jovial to dangerously cold. Lucas, I said quietly, too quietly. What is the meaning of that look? Lucas seemed to be fighting some internal war, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. Nothing, father, just. Startled by the noise. Liar, Owen said, and the word carried the weight of absolute authority. I know what a mate bond looks like when it snaps into place. I'm asking you one more time. What is the meaning of that look? The hall had gone deathly silent. Every wolf present understood the gravity of what was happening. Mate bonds were sacred, absolute. They superseded all other commitments, all other arrangements. If Lucas and Patricia were true mates, then his engagement to Kitty was void, but that would never be allowed to stand. Not when the Omega in question was Patricia. Lucas started, then stopped. His eyes found Patricia's across the room, and she saw something break in them. She's nothing, father, just an Omega who caught me off guard. The words landed like silver bullets, each one tearing through Patricia's chest. Her wolf howled in anguish, feeling the rejection even before Lucas spoke the formal words. Lucas, no, Patricia whispered, tears streaming down her face. Please don't. I, Lucas Morrison, future alpha of Silverpine Pack, he said, his voice growing stronger even as his eyes reflected pure agony, reject you, Patricia Alvarez, as my mate. I sever the bond between us by my own free will and by the authority granted to me by my bloodline. The pain was indescribable. It felt like someone had reached into Patricia's chest and torn out her heart while it was still beating. Her wolf screamed, thrashing against the rejection, fighting desperately to maintain the bond that was being ripped away. Patricia fell to her knees among the broken glass and spilled wine, her hands clutching at her chest as if she could somehow hold herself together. She could barely speak through the pain, but she had to say the words, had to complete the rejection before it killed her. I, Patricia Alvarez, accept your rejection. The bond snapped like a rope pulled too tight, and Patricia felt something fundamental inside her break. Her wolf whimpered once, then retreated so far into her consciousness that Patricia could barely sense her at all. Kitty's laughter cut through the stunned silence. Well, she said brightly, as if they'd just witnessed a minor social faux pas rather than a devastating rejection. Now that that's settled, shall we continue the celebration? I believe there's champagne waiting for a toast. The hall slowly came back to life, conversations resuming in hushed tones, as servers rushed forward to clean up the mess Patricia had made. But Patricia couldn't move. She knelt there among the broken glass, feeling the physical pain of the rejection burning through her veins like poison. Get her out of here, Owen commanded, his voice dripping with disgust. And someone inform the pack lawyer that we'll need to update our records. I want it documented that my son formally rejected his mate bond in front of witnesses. The last thing we need is any legal complications down the line. Strong hands gripped Patricia's arms, hauling her to her feet. She recognized Blake Todd's scent, felt his fingers digging into her skin hard enough to bruise. Come on, little Omega, Blake murmured in her ear, his breath hot against her neck. Let's get you somewhere you can't cause any more trouble. Though I have to say, this works out well for me. Now that you've been rejected by an alpha, maybe you'll finally see reason about my offer. Patricia tried to pull away, but her body felt like it was made of lead. The rejection had drained her of all strength, all will to fight. Blake dragged her out of the great hall, down the corridor, and into a small storage room that smelled of cleaning supplies and stale air. You stay here until the celebration's over, Blake ordered, shoving her inside. And Patricia? Think about what I said. You're damaged goods now. No one else is going to want you. But I'm willing to overlook your defects. All you have to do is say yes. The door slammed shut, and Patricia heard the lock click into place. She was alone in the darkness, her mate bond shattered, her wolf retreating into silence, and her body still burning with the agony of rejection. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the cold floor, her arms wrapped around herself, and finally allowed herself to break completely. She cried for the childhood friendship she'd lost. She cried for the mate bond that had been severed before it could even properly form. She cried for the life she'd never have, the love she'd never experience, the future that had just been ripped away from her. But most of all, she cried because somewhere deep inside, she'd always known this was how it would end. Omegas didn't get happy endings. They didn't get true mates or epic love stories. They got locked in storage rooms while the pack celebrated without them. Hours passed. The sounds of the celebration eventually faded. Patricia's tears dried up, leaving her feeling hollow and numb. She was just starting to drift into an exhausted sleep when she heard voices outside the door. Completely inexcusable. A woman's voice said. Patricia recognized it as Tanya. The Alpha is furious. He wants her gone. Gone? Another voice. Male this time. One of the pack warriors. You mean expelled from the pack? Worse. He's invoking the old laws. She's to be declared rogue at dawn. No pack will take her in once that declaration is made. Patricia's blood ran cold. Being declared rogue was a death sentence for most wolves. Without a pack's protection, without the ability to join another pack, she'd be vulnerable to every predator, both supernatural and human, that roamed the wilderness. That seems harsh, the warrior said, though his tone suggested he didn't really care one way or another. She disrupted an alpha engagement, Tanya replied. She destroyed pack property. And worst of all, she attempted to claim a bond with the future alpha when she knew he was already promised to another. The alpha is well within his rights. Attempted to claim? Patricia thought through her haze of pain and exhaustion. I didn't attempt anything. The bond just happened. But she knew the truth didn't matter. Owen had made his decision, and no one would challenge an alpha's judgment over the fate of a mere omega. The voices faded as Tanya and the warrior moved away. Patricia was left alone again, this time with the knowledge that she had less than 6 hours before dawn, before her life as she knew it ended completely. She should have been terrified. She should have been planning her escape, figuring out how to survive as a rogue in the wilderness. But all she could think about was Grandma Rosemarie and the cabin in the mountains. The cabin that was now hers, according to the will that had been read 3 months ago. The cabin that sat on land far from Silverpine territory, far from pack politics and rejection and cruelty. The cabin that might be her only hope of survival. Patricia pulled herself to her feet, her body still aching from the rejection but her mind suddenly clear. She had until dawn. That gave her time to slip away, to grab what few possessions she had, and to run. She'd been running her whole life. In one way or another. At least this time. She'd be running towards something rather than just away. She'd go to the cabin, she'd claim her inheritance, and she'd build a life far away from the pack that had never wanted her in the first place. It was the only choice she had left. Chapter 3. The Inheritance. The lock on the storage room door was old and simple, designed to keep omegas in rather than determined wolves out. Patricia had learned to pick locks when she was 13, during the long summer she'd spent at Grandma Rosemarie's cabin, while recovering from a particularly brutal training accident that had left her with 3 broken ribs. A wolf who can't shift her way out of trouble needs other tools, Grandma had said, pressing a set of lockpicks into Patricia's small hands. The world isn't kind to those it deems weak, so you learn to be strong in ways they don't expect. Patricia pulled a bobby pin from her hair, bent it into the right shape with practiced efficiency, and had the door open in less than 2 minutes. The hallway beyond was dark and empty, the celebration long since ended. She could hear snoring from some of the guest rooms, the soft murmur of conversation from the night shift guards, but no one was paying attention to a storage room in the Omega Wing. Her room was exactly as she'd left it that morning, small, sparse, containing little more than a narrow bed, a dresser with 3 drawers, and a window that looked out onto the pack's training grounds. She'd lived here for 7 years, ever since her parents had died in a rogue attack when she was 16. The pack had taken her in out of obligation rather than compassion, and they'd made sure she understood the difference every single day. Patricia moved quickly, pulling a worn backpack from under her bed. She packed the essentials: 3 changes of clothes, a first aid kit, the envelope containing the deed to her grandmother's cabin, and the small wooden box that held the only jewelry she owned, a silver necklace with a wolf pendant that Grandma Rosemary had given her on her 18th birthday. She was reaching for her jacket when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, male, moving with purpose toward her room. Patricia's heart raced as she ducked into the narrow space between her dresser and the wall, making herself as small as possible. The door creaked open, and Lucas stepped inside, his face haggard in the dim light filtering through the window. "Patricia," he called softly. "I know you're here. Please, we need to talk." She wanted to stay hidden. She wanted to disappear into the shadows and never face him again. But her body betrayed her, a sharp intake of breath giving away her position. Lucas moved the dresser aside with one hand, revealing her crouched form. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hair disheveled, and he looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past few hours. "Thank God," he breathed, reaching for her. "Patricia, listen to me. You have to leave tonight. Right now." She pushed his hand away, the phantom pain of the rejection still burning in her chest. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice hoarse. "You made your choice very clear, Lucas. Or should I say Alpha Lucas?" He flinched as if she'd struck him. "You don't understand. My father, he's planning to declare you rogue at dawn, but that's not the worst of it." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, his agitation clear. "Patricia, there are things about your bloodline that you don't know. Things your grandmother kept hidden for your protection." "What are you talking about?" "The land where your grandmother's cabin sits," Lucas said urgently, glancing over his shoulder as if afraid they'd be overheard. "It's not neutral territory. It hasn't been for over 50 years. Patricia's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "Your grandmother's property sits on the edge of the Blood Moon territory. Do you know what that means?" "The Blood Moon pack disbanded decades ago," Patricia said, repeating the history every wolf pup learned. "After the Lycan King went into isolation, his pack scattered. That land has been unclaimed for—" "That's what we've all been told," Lucas interrupted. "But it's a lie. The Blood Moon territory never became neutral ground. It belongs to him, to the Lycan King, and he's been sleeping, for lack of a better word, hibernating in the mountains, while the world forgot about him. That's impossible. Lycans don't hibernate, and the Lycan King would be over 300 years old by now. He'd be dead. Lycans don't die like normal wolves, Patricia. They're older, stronger, more powerful than any alpha could ever hope to be. And this particular Lycan King has a very specific reason for staying hidden in those mountains." Lucas gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Your grandmother knew him. She had some kind of agreement with him, some bargain that allowed her to live on his land undisturbed. But with her death, that agreement is void." Patricia's mind raced. Grandma Rosemary had never mentioned anything about the Lycan King or ancient bargains. She just said the cabin was Patricia's birthright, that it had been in their family for generations. But Grandma had said other things too, Patricia realized. Things about bloodlines and old magic and the importance of staying true to who you are, even when the world tries to make you small. "Why are you telling me this?" Patricia demanded. "If you know the land is dangerous, why warn me at all? You rejected me. You chose Kitty and your father's approval over one." "I chose the pack," Lucas said, his voice breaking. "I chose 300 wolves who depend on me for protection over one mate who—" He stopped himself, shaking his head. "You don't understand the politics, Patricia. My father knew. He knew about our mate bond before tonight." The words hung in the air like poison. "What?" "He's known for 2 years," Lucas admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Since I turned 25 and started experiencing the early signs of the bond, he had a seer read my future, trying to determine who my mate would be so he could arrange an advantageous match. When she told him it was you, he forbade me from completing the bond. He said I had to reject you the moment the bond fully manifested." Patricia felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. 2 years, she repeated numbly. "You've known for 2 years that I was your mate, and you said nothing. You let me think. I was trying to find another way." Lucas's voice rose with desperation. "I was trying to convince my father, trying to find some loophole in pack law that would allow me to claim you without destroying my position as alpha heir. But tonight, When the bond snapped into place in front of everyone, I had no choice. If I'd accepted you, my father would have challenged me for the alpha position. He would have killed me, Patricia. And then he would have had you declared rogue anyway. At least this way you're alive. Barely, Patricia said bitterly. She pulled away from his grip, shouldering her backpack. You should go, Lucas. Before someone sees you here and gets the wrong idea, wouldn't want to compromise your engagement to Kitty. Patricia, please. There were tears in his eyes now, actual tears streaming down the face of the future alpha of Silverpine Pack. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I hurt you in ways that can never be repaired. But please, listen to me about the cabin. Don't go there. Go anywhere else, I'll give you money. I'll arrange passage to another territory, but don't go to that cabin. Why? Because the big bad Lycan King might wake up and what? Eat me? Patricia laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been rejected by my true mate, declared rogue by my pack, and locked in a storage room like trash. Whatever the Lycan King might do to me can't possibly be worse than what's already been done. You don't understand what he's capable of. No, Lucas, you don't understand what I'm capable of. Patricia moved toward the door, then paused. Grandma Rosemary left me that cabin for a reason. She knew I'd need it someday, knew that the pack would eventually show their true colors. If she wasn't afraid of the Lycan King, then neither am I. Your grandmother was Lucas started, then stopped himself. Was what? He looked at her for a long moment, conflict warring across his features. Finally, he shook his head. Just be careful. And Patricia? For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So am I, Patricia said quietly. I'm sorry I ever believed that someone like you could be brave enough to love someone like me. She left him standing in her empty room and didn't look back. The pack house had 3 main exits, all of which would be guarded. But it also had 7 secondary exits that most wolves had forgotten about, including the old coal chute in the basement that hadn't been used since the pack converted to modern heating 30 years ago. Patricia squeezed through the narrow opening, emerging in the bushes behind the pack house covered in dust and cobwebs. She allowed herself one moment to look back at the only home she'd known for the past 7 years, then turned toward the forest and ran. Her wolf was still too hurt, too withdrawn from the rejection to shift. So Patricia ran on human legs, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, her breath coming in sharp gasps as she pushed herself faster than she'd ever run before. Dawn was less than 3 hours away. She needed to be far beyond Silverpine's borders before Owen declared her rogue, before the pack's trackers were sent to hunt her down. The forest flew by in a blur of shadows and moonlight. Patricia knew these woods intimately. She'd spent countless hours exploring them during her childhood, mapping out the safest routes and the hidden paths that most wolves overlooked. She used every bit of that knowledge now, moving through the underbrush like a ghost, leaving as little scent trail as possible. She was 2 miles from the border when she heard the howls behind her. They'd discovered her escape sooner than expected. And they were already hunting. Patricia pushed herself harder, her muscles screaming in protest. She could see the border markers now, the old oak tree with the silver pine crest carved into its trunk, the stream that separated their territory from the unclaimed wilderness beyond. The howls were getting closer. She burst through the underbrush and plunged into the icy stream, the water soaking her clothes and making her gasp with shock. But it would hide her scent, would buy her precious minutes while the trackers tried to figure out which direction she'd gone. Patricia dragged herself up the opposite bank and kept running. She was beyond the borders now, officially in unclaimed territory. But she wouldn't be safe until she reached her grandmother's land, until she could claim sanctuary in the cabin that was her birthright. If Lucas was right about the land belonging to the Lycan King, then crossing onto that property without permission was either the bravest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. But I don't have a choice, Patricia thought as she ran. I either risk the Lycan King's wrath or face certain death from my own pack. At least with the king, there's a chance he won't care about one Omega trespassing on his land. The sky was starting to lighten in the east when Patricia finally saw it, the small wooden cabin nestled in a clearing, smoke curling from the chimney as if someone had just stoked the fire. But that was impossible. Grandma Rosemary had been dead for 3 months. No one had been to the cabin since. Patricia slowed to a walk, her instincts screaming warnings. Something was wrong. Something about the way the morning mist clung to the ground, about the absolute silence of the forest around her. about the way her wolf suddenly stirred for the first time since the rejection. She was 10 feet from the cabin door when she felt a presence so powerful, so ancient, that it made the air itself feel heavy. Her wolf whimpered and pressed against her consciousness, torn between terror and something else. Something that felt terrifyingly like recognition. The cabin door opened, and Patricia Alvarez came face to face with the Lycan King. He was tall, at least 6.5 feet, with silver-white hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes that glowed like molten gold in the dawnlight. He wore simple clothes, dark pants and a loose shirt, but there was nothing simple about the way he moved or the absolute authority that radiated from every inch of his being. He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled. And it was the most terrifying thing Patricia had ever seen. "Hello, little Omega," he said, his voice like thunder wrapped in silk. "I've been waiting for you." Chapter 4. Ancient Bloodlines. Patricia's legs refused to move. Every instinct she possessed screamed at her to run, to shift, to do something other than stand frozen like prey before a predator. But her wolf, her damaged, rejected, barely there wolf had gone completely still. Mesmerized by the creature standing in the doorway of what was supposed to be her cabin, the Lycan King descended the 3 wooden steps with a grace that seemed impossible for someone his size. Each movement was precise, controlled, like a warrior who'd spent centuries perfecting the art of controlled violence. "You're trembling," he observed, tilting his head slightly. "Is it fear or cold? You're soaked through." Patricia found her voice, though it came out shakier than she would have liked. "Who are you? What are you doing in my grandmother's cabin?" "Your grandmother's cabin?" One silver eyebrow arched. "Interesting. And here I thought it was my cabin, on my land, in my territory." He took a step closer, and Patricia instinctively took a step back. "But I suppose Rosemary never did explain the full truth to you, did she? You knew my grandmother? Knew her?" The Lycan King laughed, and the sound rolled through the clearing like distant thunder. "Little Omega, I've known your bloodline for longer than your pack has existed. Rosemary Love and I had an arrangement. She was permitted to use this cabin in exchange for certain services rendered." Patricia's mind raced. Grandma's last name had been Love, but she'd always used Morrison after marrying Patricia's grandfather. And the way this creature said, "services rendered," made Patricia's skin crawl. "What kind of services?" she demanded, trying to inject some courage into her voice. The Lycan King's golden eyes gleamed with amusement. "Nothing sordid, if that's what you're implying. Your grandmother was a healer, one of the last who remembered the old ways. When I required her skills, she provided them. In return, I allowed her to live on my land unmolested." He took another step forward, and this time Patricia held her ground. "But Rosemary is dead, and you, little Omega, are trespassing. The cabin is mine now," Patricia said, pulling the envelope from her backpack with shaking hands. "I have the deed. It was left to me in my grandmother's will. A human legal document means nothing on Lycan territory," he said dismissively. "Your grandmother had my permission to reside here. You do not. Then I'm asking for permission." The words came out before Patricia could stop them, driven by desperation, and the knowledge that she had nowhere else to go. "Please, I have nowhere else to go. My pack." Her voice broke. "My pack declared me rogue. If I don't have sanctuary here, I'll be hunted down and killed." The Lycan King went very still. "Declared rogue? For what offense?" For Patricia swallowed hard, humiliation burning through her. For being the rejected mate of their future alpha, for disrupting an engagement celebration, for existing as an inconvenience. Something dangerous flashed through those golden eyes. "Your mate rejected you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I'm Omega," Patricia said bitterly. "Because his father arranged a more politically advantageous match. Because in my pack, true mate bonds mean nothing compared to status and power." The Lycan King was silent for a long moment, studying her with an intensity that made Patricia feel like he could see straight through to her soul. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped to something low and deadly. "Your alpha declared you rogue because your mate was too weak to claim what the moon goddess gave him?" "He's not weak." Patricia found herself defending Lucas, though she didn't know why. "He's just trapped by duty, by his father's expectations. Weakness by another name." the Lycan King said dismissively. He circled around her slowly, like a wolf sizing up potential prey. Tell me, little Omega. Do you know why your grandmother never told you about me? About this land's true ownership? No. Because she knew that the moment you stepped foot on my territory, everything would change. He stopped directly in front of her, so close that Patricia had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. She knew that I would sense you the moment you crossed my borders. She knew that I would recognize what you are. Patricia's heart hammered in her chest. What I am? I'm just an Omega. Nothing special. Nothing. You are Rosemary Love's granddaughter, he interrupted, which makes you a descendant of the Silver Moon bloodline, one of the original pack lines, before the great fracturing 3 centuries ago. His hand shot out, faster than Patricia could track, gripping her chin and forcing her to maintain eye contact. Your grandmother was not just a healer, little Omega. She was a Silver Moon princess in hiding, and that makes you royalty by blood. Even if your current pack is too ignorant to recognize it. Patricia tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. That's impossible. My family has no royal blood. We're just commoners, Omegas. The Lycan King's laugh was harsh. Is that what they told you? What they made you believe? He released her chin, but his gaze held her as surely as his physical touch had. The Omega designation is not a measure of true strength, child. It's a measure of submission to pack hierarchy, and your bloodline has never been good at submission. I don't understand. Of course you don't, because your pack has spent your entire life making you small, making you weak, making you believe that your worth is determined by their opinion of you. He turned away, walking back toward the cabin. But here, on my territory, their opinions mean nothing. Here, there is only one authority, and it is mine. Patricia watched him climb the steps, confusion and exhaustion making her dizzy. What are you saying? Are you giving me permission to stay or not? The Lycan King paused at the door, looking back over his shoulder. I'm saying that you may stay in this cabin temporarily, while we determine what to do with you. I'm saying that Rosemary's bargain has ended, but perhaps we can negotiate a new one. His smile was sharp enough to cut. I'm saying that you're on my territory now, little Omega, and that means you play by my rules. What rules? First rule. You do not leave this land without my permission. The moment you cross my borders, you're fair game for any pack that wants to hunt you down. Patricia's stomach sank. So I'm a prisoner. Call it protective custody if it makes you feel better. He pushed the door open, and warm light spilled out into the dawn. Second rule. You will answer any questions I ask you truthfully. I despise liars almost as much as I despise weak alphas who reject their mates. And if I refuse, then I'll throw you out of my territory myself, and let the wolves have you. His golden eyes gleamed. Your choice, little Omega. Prison, or death. Which do you prefer? It wasn't a choice at all, and they both knew it. Patricia squared her shoulders, trying to maintain what little dignity she had left. I'll stay. And I'll answer your questions. But I have conditions of my own. The Lycan King's eyebrows rose. Do you now? How bold of you, making demands when you have no leverage whatsoever. I want to be able to move freely within your territory, Patricia said, her voice stronger now. I want access to the cabin and the surrounding forest. And I want you to promise that you won't hurt me. I make no promises about not hurting you, he said bluntly. Pain is sometimes necessary for growth. But I will promise not to kill you or cause you permanent harm without just cause. As for moving freely within my territory, he considered this for a moment. You may have access to the cabin and the immediate forest surrounding it, but there are places on this land that are forbidden to all but myself. Cross those boundaries, and our bargain is void. How will I know where the boundaries are? You'll feel them, he said simply. The land will warn you when you're approaching somewhere you shouldn't be. If you're wise, you'll listen to those warnings. Patricia nodded slowly, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night was fading, leaving behind bone-deep weariness and the persistent ache of the rejected mate bond. Good, the Lycan King said. Now get inside before you collapse. You look half dead, and I need you conscious for the conversation we're about to have. Can it wait? Patricia asked weakly. I've been running all night. I just need a few hours to sleep. No. The word was absolute, brooking no argument. The questions I have cannot wait. Inside. Now. Patricia climbed the steps on shaking legs, brushing past the Lycan King to enter the cabin. It looked exactly as she remembered from her childhood visits: the worn leather sofa near the fireplace, the small kitchen with its cast-iron stove, the wooden table where she and Grandma Rosemary had shared countless meals. But there were new additions too, books scattered across the table, some of them so old that the leather bindings were cracked and faded. A map spread across one wall, marked with symbols Patricia didn't recognize. And in the corner, a massive 4-poster bed that definitely hadn't been there during her grandmother's time. You've been living here, Patricia realized. Since my grandmother died. You moved into her cabin. My cabin, he corrected. And yes, Rosemary's death created certain complications. I needed to be closer to this location, while I sorted them out. What complications? The Lycan King closed the door behind them, and Patricia heard the distinct click of a lock. She tensed, suddenly very aware that she was alone in a cabin with a predator who could probably kill her without breaking a sweat. Sit, he commanded, gesturing to the sofa. And prepare yourself, little Omega. The story I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about your grandmother, your bloodline, and why you were really declared rogue. Patricia sat, her wet clothes soaking into the leather. She hugged her backpack to her chest like a shield and waited. The Lycan King remained standing, his back to the fire, his face cast in shadows. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. 300 years ago, there were 5 great packs that ruled over all wolfkind. The Blood Moon, the Silver Moon, the Darkwood, the Stonefang, and the Nightshade. Each pack had its own territory, its own traditions, its own strength, and each pack was ruled by a Lycan beings of pure power, blessed by the moon goddess herself to lead and protect. Patricia had heard this story before, in the fragmentary histories that pack elders sometimes shared with pups. But she'd always thought it was mythology, legend rather than fact. The Silver Moon pack was known for its healers, the Lycan King continued. They possessed magic in their blood, the ability to mend not just physical wounds but spiritual ones. Your grandmother was the last pure-blooded Silver Moon healer. And she was supposed to be mine. Patricia's eyes widened. What? We were betrothed, he said flatly. An alliance arranged by our respective packs to unite the Blood Moon and Silver Moon lines. Rosemary was to be my queen, and together we would have ruled over the largest territory the wolfkind had ever known. But she didn't, Patricia whispered. She married my grandfather instead. A Morrison. A wolf from Silverpine Pack. Yes. The single word dripped with old anger. She ran away on the eve of our bonding ceremony, disappeared into the human world, changed her name, married a common wolf who didn't even know what she truly was. And when I finally found her, decades later, she begged me for sanctuary. For herself? For her family. The Lycan King's jaw clenched. She told me she'd had a vision, that the Silver Moon bloodline was being hunted by something dark and ancient. She said her daughter, your mother, had already been marked for death, and that she needed my protection to keep you safe. Patricia felt tears burning behind her eyes. My mother died when I was 16. Rogue attack, they said. There was no rogue attack, the Lycan King said quietly. Your mother was assassinated, and I failed to protect her because I was too focused on my own anger, my own resentment toward Rosemary for the choice she'd made all those years ago. The cabin fell silent except for the crackling of the fire. Patricia tried to process what she was being told, tried to make sense of how her entire life had apparently been built on lies and hidden histories. Why are you telling me this? She finally asked. The Lycan King moved closer, crouching down so they were at eye level. His golden eyes seemed to see straight through her defenses, through the walls she'd built to protect herself from more pain. Because you're in danger, little Omega. Real danger. And you need to understand what's at stake. His hand reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face, in a gesture that was almost gentle. Your rejection tonight. It wasn't random. It wasn't just politics. Someone wanted you vulnerable, wanted you cast out from your pack's protection. Who? That, he said grimly, is what we're going to find out. Together. Chapter 5. Breaking Chains. Patricia stared at the Lycan King, her mind struggling to reconcile what he was telling her with everything she'd been taught about her family, her history, her place in the world. "You're saying someone orchestrated my rejection," she said slowly, testing the words. "That Lucas was, what, manipulated into rejecting me?" "Not manipulated. Pressured, certainly. But ultimately, he made his own choice." The Lycan King stood, moving to the table where the ancient books lay scattered. "Tell me, did Alpha Owen ever show unusual interest in your family before your parents died?" Patricia thought back, sifting through childhood memories. He came to our house once. I was maybe 10 years old. I remember because my mother sent me upstairs, told me to stay in my room no matter what I heard. They argued for hours. About what? I don't know. But after he left, my mother was crying. And my father, Patricia's voice caught. My father looked terrified. I'd never seen him afraid before. The Lycan King nodded as if this confirmed something. "Owen knew about your bloodline. Rosemary told me he'd discovered the truth about the Silver Moon connection. She thought he would keep the secret. That pack loyalty would be enough." His expression darkened. She was wrong. But why would Owen care? The Silver Moon pack is gone. Whatever power they had died out centuries ago. Power like that doesn't die, little Omega. It sleeps. It waits. It passes through bloodlines, even when those bloodlines don't know what they carry. The Lycan King opened one of the ancient books, revealing pages covered in symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the firelight. Your grandmother's healing abilities weren't just skill. They were magic. Pure, ancient magic that most modern wolves have forgotten even exists. Patricia shook her head. "I don't have any magic. I can barely shift. I'm the weakest wolf in." "You're not weak," he interrupted sharply. "You're suppressed. There's a difference." He turned the book toward her, pointing to a passage written in a language she couldn't read. "This is the rite of diminishment, an old curse designed to bind the power of strong bloodlines, to make them appear Omega when they're anything but." "A curse?" Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. "One that requires 3 things. A blood sacrifice from the line being cursed, a betrayal of trust, and time." His golden eyes bore into hers. "Your parents' death provided the blood sacrifice. Owen's betrayal of your mother's trust provided the second component. And 16 years of you growing up believing you were worthless provided the third." Patricia felt like the ground was tilting beneath her. "That's insane. Why would anyone go to such lengths to curse a child?" "Because you're not just any child. You're the last direct descendant of the Silver Moon line. And according to prophecy," he stopped himself, his jaw clenching. "According to prophecy." "What?" The Lycan King closed the book with more force than necessary. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that someone wants you powerless. Someone wants the Silver Moon bloodline extinguished. And now that you've been rejected and declared rogue, you're more vulnerable than ever." Patricia stood on shaking legs, her wet clothes clinging uncomfortably to her skin. "I need to change. I need to think. This is all too much." "Your old room is still intact," the Lycan King said, gesturing to the small door near the back of the cabin. "Rosemary kept it exactly as you left it after your last visit. You'll find dry clothes in the dresser." Patricia moved toward the room mechanically, her mind still reeling. But at the threshold she paused. "You still haven't told me your name. The Lycan King of Bloodmoon isn't exactly personal." He regarded her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across his features. "Vince," he finally said. "My name is Vince Shields, and I have not spoken it aloud to another living soul in over 200 years. Why tell me now? Because if we're going to work together to keep you alive, little Omega, we might as well be on a first-name basis." His lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "And because your grandmother asked me to watch over you, if anything ever happened to her, I failed to protect your mother, but I will not fail again." Patricia nodded slowly, not trusting herself to speak, and slipped into the small bedroom. It was exactly as she remembered: the narrow bed with its patchwork quilt, the dresser painted with wildflowers, the window that looked out onto a meadow filled with purple lupines. She peeled off her wet clothes with trembling fingers, and found a soft flannel shirt and worn jeans in the dresser, exactly where they'd always been. As she dressed, she caught sight of herself in the small mirror above the dresser. She looked like hell, Her dark hair hung in tangled ropes around her face. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying and exhaustion. And there, just visible above the collar of her shirt, was a mark she'd never seen before, a faint silvery scar in the shape of a crescent moon. Patricia pulled the shirt down, studying the mark in confusion. It looked old, healed, but she had no memory of receiving such an injury. She traced it with her fingers and felt a strange warmth spread through her chest, like embers stirring to life. Magic, she thought with wonder and fear. Could it be real? A knock on the door made her jump. "Patricia," Vince called. "You need to see this." She opened the door to find him holding a letter. The paper yellowed with age and sealed with red wax. The seal bore a symbol she recognized instantly, the silver moon crest that Grandma Rosemary had drawn for her countless times during their summers together. "I found this in Rosemary's personal effects," Vince said, handing her the letter. "It's addressed to you. She left instructions that it should only be opened if you came to the cabin seeking sanctuary." Patricia broke the seal with shaking hands and unfolded the letter. Her grandmother's elegant script filled the page, and just seeing those familiar loops and curves made tears well up in her eyes. "My dearest Patricia, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened. You've been rejected, cast out, made to feel worthless by wolves who cannot see your true value. My heart breaks knowing the pain you must be feeling, but I need you to understand that none of this is your fault. The curse placed upon you was meant to keep you safe, to hide you from those who would use your power for their own ends. I thought if you appeared weak, if you seemed omega in every way, you would be overlooked, ignored, allowed to live a quiet life away from the politics and bloodshed that destroyed our family. I was wrong. By trying to protect you, I only made you vulnerable, and now I must ask you to do something terrifying. I must ask you to trust Vince Shields. I know what I told you about Lycans, about how dangerous they are. But Vince is different. He is bound by honor in ways that modern wolves have forgotten. And more importantly, he owes me a debt that can only be repaid by keeping you safe. There are things about your bloodline that I never told you. Secrets about the Silver Moon magic and what it truly means to carry that power. Vince knows these secrets. He can teach you, train you, help you unlock the strength that has been bound inside you for so long. But be warned, my precious girl, breaking the rite of diminishment will not be easy. It will require you to face the darkest parts of yourself, to confront the pain and rejection that has shaped you. It will require you to trust someone when trust has only ever brought you betrayal. I wish I could be there with you. I wish I could spare you this journey. But some paths must be walked alone. Know that I loved you. Know that your mother loved you. And know that the power sleeping inside you is not something to fear, but something to embrace. You are Silver Moon. You are royal blood. And it's time the world remembered what that means. With all my love, Grandmother Rosemary. P.S. Don't let Vince intimidate you too much. Beneath all that Lycan posturing, he's really quite decent. Though you didn't hear that from me. Patricia read the letter 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of meaning. When she finally looked up, Vince was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "She always did have a talent for last words," he said quietly. "The rite of diminishment," Patricia said, her voice steadier now. "You said breaking it wouldn't be easy. What did you mean?" Vince moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames, as if they held answers. "The curse was designed to suppress your power, by binding it to your deepest wounds. Every rejection, every moment of pain, every time someone made you feel worthless, all of that fed the curse, made it stronger." He turned to face her. "To break it, you have to confront those wounds. You have to face every painful memory, every moment of trauma, and choose to release the power that's been bound to them." "That sounds like psychological torture." "It is," he agreed bluntly. "Which is why most wolves who've been cursed this way never break free. They prefer to live diminished, rather than face what broke them in the first place." Patricia thought about Lucas's rejection, about the years of cruelty from her pack, about watching her parents die when she was too young to understand why. The idea of deliberately confronting all of that pain made her want to curl up and disappear. But Grandma Rosemary's words echoed in her mind. "You are Silver Moon. You are royal blood. How long would it take?" she asked. "To break the curse?" "That depends on you. Days, weeks, months. There's no set timeline. Vince crossed his arms. But I should warn you, the process will be dangerous in more ways than one. As you begin to unlock your power, you'll become visible to those who can sense strong magic, including whoever cursed you in the first place. So, I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't, Patricia said bitterly. Stay cursed and remain vulnerable, or break the curse and paint a target on my back. Yes. Vince's expression was grim. Welcome to being Silver Moon royalty. It's every bit as wonderful as it sounds. Patricia laughed, and was surprised to hear that it sounded almost genuine. My grandmother really knew how to pick her allies. A sarcastic Lycan King with a grudge against the world. I don't have a grudge against the world, Vince said. Just against the parts of it that murder innocent wolves and curse children. He moved closer. And Patricia was struck again by how utterly inhuman he seemed. Too perfect, too powerful, too ancient to be standing in this small cabin discussing magic and curses like they were everyday occurrences. I need time to think, Patricia said. Everything you've told me, everything in that letter, I need time to process it before I make any decisions about breaking curses or unlocking powers. You don't have much time, Vince warned. Your rejection happened hours ago. The pack will have sent trackers to follow your trail by now, and when they realize you've entered Lycan territory, they'll what? Come after me anyway? No. Vince's smile was sharp and cold. They'll report to whoever hired them to ensure you were rejected and cast out. And that person will send something far worse than pack trackers. A chill ran down Patricia's spine. What could be worse than pack trackers? Hunters, Vince said quietly. Human mercenaries who specialize in killing supernatural beings. They're expensive, efficient, and they don't ask questions about the morality of their targets. His golden eyes met hers. I've dealt with hunters before. They're the reason I went into isolation 300 years ago. They nearly wiped out the entire Blood Moon pack. Patricia felt her knees go weak. She sank onto the sofa, her mind struggling to process yet another layer of danger added to her already impossible situation. So my options are, stay here and learn to break a curse while being hunted by professionals, or leave and definitely die because I have no pack protection and no place to go. She looked up at Vince. Those are terrible options. Yes, he agreed. But they're the only options you have. So I'll ask you one more time, little Omega. Are you brave enough to embrace what you are? Or will you let them win by making you believe you're nothing? Patricia thought about her mother, murdered by something dark and ancient. She thought about Grandma Rosemary, keeping secrets to protect a granddaughter she knew would one day need them. She thought about Lucas, too weak to claim his true mate even when the moon goddess herself had chosen them for each other. And she thought about herself, the girl who'd spent her entire life being told she was worthless, who'd believed those lies so thoroughly that she'd never questioned whether they were true. I'm tired of being small, Patricia said quietly. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of letting other people decide what I'm worth. She met Vince's eyes, and for the first time since entering the cabin, she didn't look away. Teach me. Help me break this curse. And then help me figure out who's behind all of this and why they wanted me broken. Vince studied her for a long moment, and Patricia thought she saw something like approval flicker across his features. All right, little Omega, but understand this. Once we start this process, there's no going back. You might become powerful beyond anything you've imagined, or you might discover that the pain of your past is too great to overcome. I understand. Do you? He moved closer, and Patricia forced herself to hold her ground. Because the first step in breaking the curse requires you to face the most recent wound, the one that's still bleeding. Patricia's hand went to her chest, where the phantom pain of Lucas's rejection still throbbed with every heartbeat. The mate bond. Yes. Vince's voice softened slightly. We need to sever the connection completely, not just formally. Right now, part of you is still reaching for him, still hoping he'll change his mind and come claim you. That hope is feeding the curse, giving it power over you. How do I sever it? Vince held out his hand. You let me in. You let me see the memory of the rejection, every moment of it, every feeling, and then we burn it out of you together. Patricia stared at his hand like it might bite her. Letting anyone into her mind, into her most painful memories, felt like the ultimate violation. But if it was the only way to move forward, to reclaim some semblance of power over her own life, she placed her hand in his. Vince's grip was warm, solid, and the moment their skin touched, Patricia felt a surge of energy that made her gasp. It wasn't painful, exactly, but it was overwhelming, like touching a live wire, like standing in the middle of a lightning storm. "Close your eyes," Vince instructed. "And remember everything about the moment the bond snapped into place, and the moment he rejected you. Don't hide from it. Don't try to make it hurt less. Just remember." Patricia closed her eyes and let herself fall backward into the memory she'd been desperately trying to forget. The scent of pine and cedar. The moment of perfect recognition. The way her wolf had sung with joy for exactly 3 seconds before everything shattered. Lucas's face, pale with horror and resignation. "I, Lucas Morrison, future alpha of Silverpine Pack, reject you, Patricia Alvarez, as my mate." The pain lancing through her chest, worse than any physical injury. Her wolf's anguished howl, echoing through her consciousness. The sound of the wine glass breaking against marble, the laughter of the crowd, the feeling of being utterly, completely alone. "Enough," Vince's voice cut through the memory. "Now look at me, Patricia. Open your eyes and look at me." She did, and gasped. Vince's eyes were glowing brighter than before, pure molten gold, and his hand where it gripped hers was almost painfully hot. "I'm going to burn out that bond," he said, his voice taking on a resonance that seemed to come from somewhere deep and primal. "It's going to hurt, but when it's done, you'll be free of him. Completely free. Do you consent?" Patricia's heart hammered, but she thought of Lucas standing in her room, crying because he'd been too weak to choose her. She thought of the next 20 years, feeling this phantom ache every time she thought of him. "I consent," she whispered. Vince's power slammed into her like a tidal wave. Patricia screamed. Chapter 6. The Burning. The pain was unlike anything Patricia had ever experienced. It felt as though Vince had reached into her chest and grabbed the remnants of the mate bond with his bare hands, pulling at threads that had been woven into her very soul. Fire burned through her veins, white-hot and merciless. Every nerve ending screamed in protest, as Vince's power sought out every trace of Lucas's connection to her. Every moment of childhood friendship, every secret smile, every time her heart had stuttered when he walked into a room. "Don't fight it," Vince commanded, his voice cutting through her agony. "The more you resist, the worse it becomes. Let it burn, Patricia. Let him go." But how could she let go of someone who'd been part of her life for so long? Lucas had been her friend before he'd been her mate. He'd been the boy who taught her how to climb trees, who'd shared his lunch when other pack children had stolen hers, who'd promised that being Omega didn't make her less. He'd also been the man who'd stood in front of his entire pack and severed their bond without hesitation. Patricia forced herself to stop fighting, to let Vince's power flood through her unchecked. The memories came faster now, sharper, each one blazing bright before being consumed by silver fire. Lucas at 8 years old, defending her from bullies. Burn. Lucas at 16, his face carefully neutral when she'd shifted for the first time and revealed her Omega status. Burn. Lucas at 25, avoiding her eyes in the hallways of the pack house, the distance between them growing with each passing day. Burn. Lucas tonight, his voice breaking as he rejected the bond the moon goddess had forged between them. Burn. The fire consumed everything, leaving behind only ash and emptiness. Patricia felt the phantom pain in her chest flare one final time, bright and terrible, and then it was gone, completely gone. The constant ache that had been her companion since the rejection vanished, like it had never existed at all. She collapsed forward, and Vince caught her, lowering her gently to the floor. Patricia gasped for breath, her entire body trembling with exhaustion and shock. "It's done," Vince said quietly. "The bond is severed completely. How do you feel?" Patricia took inventory of herself, searching for the pain that had defined the past few hours. There was nothing, no ache, no longing, no phantom pull toward a mate who'd rejected her. Just emptiness. And something else. Something that felt like the first stirrings of freedom. "I feel hollow," she admitted, her voice hoarse. "But also lighter. Is that normal?" "Yes." Vince helped her back onto the sofa, then moved to the kitchen. She heard water running, and a moment later he pressed a cool glass into her hands. "Drink," The burning takes a toll on the body. Patricia drank gratefully, the water soothing her raw throat. How many more times do we have to do that? That depends on how many wounds the curse is feeding on. Vince settled into the chair across from her, his golden eyes still glowing faintly. The mate rejection was the most recent, which made it the easiest to access. The older wounds are buried deeper. They'll require more work to uncover and burn out. Define more work. Meditation. Memory exploration. Possibly some rituals that your grandmother would have known, but that I'll need to reconstruct from ancient texts. He gestured to the books scattered across the table. This isn't something we can rush, Patricia. Each wound needs to be addressed properly, or the curse will simply reform around the remaining pain. Patricia set down the empty glass, her hands still shaking slightly. How long do we have before whoever cursed me realizes I'm trying to break it? Hard to say. The curse was designed to be subtle, to hide in plain sight. But as you begin to unlock your power, you'll start to emit a different energy signature. Anyone sensitive to magic will be able to sense the change. Vince's expression darkened. Which is why we need to prepare you for what's coming. You mean the hunters? Among other things. He stood, moving to the map on the wall. Patricia could see now that it wasn't just a normal territorial map. It was covered in symbols, markings, and lines that seemed to pulse with faint light. This is my territory. 300 square miles of mountain forest, all of it protected by wards I set centuries ago. Nothing crosses these boundaries without my knowledge. Patricia joined him at the map, studying the intricate markings. Nothing? Nothing supernatural. Vince clarified. Humans can pass through if they're determined enough. It's one of the weaknesses of old magic. It has trouble recognizing threats that don't register as supernatural beings. He pointed to a series of red marks clustered near what Patricia assumed was the southern Avar border. These are the locations where hunters have tried to breach my territory in the past. Most turned back when they felt the wards pushing against them. A few were persistent. What happened to them? Vince's smile was cold. Let's just say they're part of the forest now. Patricia shivered, suddenly very aware that the being standing next to her had killed before and would do so again without hesitation. And you think hunters will come for me? I know they will. The question is when. He turned to face her fully. Which is why you need to learn to defend yourself. Your Omega training has made you think you're weak, made you believe your only option in a fight is to submit or run. We need to break that conditioning. I've never been much of a fighter, Patricia admitted. My wolf is small, not very strong. Your wolf is cursed, Vince interrupted. Once we break the rite of diminishment, your true wolf will emerge. And I guarantee she won't be small or weak. He studied her for a moment. But even before that happens, you need to learn the basics. Hand-to-hand combat. Strategy. How to use your environment to your advantage. You want to train me. I want to ensure you survive. Vince's voice was firm. Rosemary asked me to protect you, and I will. But I can't be with you every moment. You need to be able to protect yourself. Patricia thought about all the years she'd spent making herself small, avoiding conflict, accepting abuse because fighting back only made things worse. The idea of learning to fight, to defend herself, to be something other than a victim. When do we start? She asked. Vince's smile was approving. We start now. Follow me. He led her outside, into the clearing behind the cabin. The sun had fully risen now, casting golden light across the meadow of purple lupines. The forest around them was alive with birdsong and the rustle of wind through pine branches. It was beautiful, peaceful, completely at odds with what they were about to do. First lesson, Vince said, moving to the center of the clearing. Forget everything your pack taught you about Omegas being submissive. That mentality will get you killed. In a real fight, there are no rules, no hierarchy, no concept of showing your throat and hoping your opponent shows mercy. My pack never actually taught me to fight, Patricia admitted. Omegas weren't allowed in combat training. Vince's jaw clenched. Of course they weren't. Heaven forbid the weak ones learn to defend themselves. He shook his head. All right, we'll start from the very beginning. Show me your stance. Patricia tried to remember the fighting stances she'd observed during pack training sessions. She spread her feet shoulder-width apart, raised her fists near her face, and tried to look intimidating. Vince circled her slowly, his expression critical. Too rigid. You're standing like someone who's afraid of being hit. That fear will make you slow. He stopped in front of her. Attack me. What? Attack me. Try to hit me. Punch, kick, whatever feels natural. I need to see how you move when you're trying to hurt someone. Patricia hesitated. The idea of attacking a Lycan King seemed insane. I'll just embarrass myself. Probably, Vince agreed. But that's the point. You need to fail so you can learn. Now attack me, or I'll make you regret wasting my time. Something in his tone sparked anger in Patricia's chest, a hot, bright feeling she hadn't let herself experience in years. She'd been so focused on being small, on not making waves, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be genuinely angry. She swung at him. It was a clumsy punch, poorly aimed and telegraphed from a mile away. Vince sidestepped it easily, caught her wrist, and used her own momentum to flip her onto her back. Patricia hit the ground hard enough to knock the wind out of her lungs. Pathetic, Vince said, though his tone wasn't cruel. You're not even trying to hurt me. You're going through the motions because I told you to. But there's no real intent behind it. He offered his hand to help her up. Again. And this time remember every person who ever hurt you. Every moment of pain, every rejection, every time someone made you feel worthless. Channel that into your attack. Patricia took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. She thought about Kitty's cruelty, about Blake's unwanted advances, about Owen's casual dismissal of her existence. She thought about Lucas, crying in her room while refusing to actually fight for what they could have had. She thought about being locked in a storage room like garbage. This time, when she attacked, there was real force behind it. Vince still blocked her easily, but she felt the shift in his stance, the slight adjustment he had to make to deflect her blow. Better, he said. You're angry now. Good. Anger is fuel. But you need to channel it properly, or you'll just burn yourself out. They trained for hours, Vince teaching her basic strikes, blocks, how to use her smaller size to her advantage against larger opponents. Patricia fell more times than she could count, her body accumulating bruises that would probably hurt worse tomorrow. But she also landed her first real hit, a kick to Vince's knee that actually made him stumble. Excellent, he said, and Patricia felt a warm surge of pride at the approval in his voice. You're learning. Your instincts are better than you think. Years of surviving in a hostile pack taught you to read body language, to anticipate attacks before they happen. We just need to translate that defensive awareness into offensive capability. Patricia bent over, hands on her knees, trying to catch her breath. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest, and she was pretty sure she had grass stains in places grass stains had no business being. Can we take a break? She gasped. I think I'm dying. You're not dying. You're just weak from years of neglect. But Vince gestured back toward the cabin. Fine, we'll break for food. You need to eat anyway. Breaking the curse requires significant energy. And you're already running on empty. Inside, Vince proved surprisingly competent in the kitchen, preparing a simple meal of eggs, toast, and what looked like venison sausage. Patricia devoured it gratefully, not realizing how hungry she was until food was in front of her. So what's next? She asked between bites. More combat training, another burning session. Tonight we'll work on accessing the next layer of wounds, Vince said. But this afternoon you rest. Your body needs time to recover, and I need time to prepare the ritual space. Ritual space? The deeper wounds require more formal approaches. We'll need to create a protected circle, invoke certain ancient protections, ensure that nothing can interfere with the process. He refilled her water glass. Memory work can leave you vulnerable. The last thing we need is something dark taking advantage while your defenses are down. Patricia set down her fork, appetite suddenly gone. You keep talking about something dark, and whoever cursed me like it's some nameless entity. Do you actually have any idea who we're dealing with? Vince was silent for a long moment, his golden eyes distant. I have theories, he finally said. But nothing concrete. The rite of diminishment is old magic, Patricia. Very few beings alive today would even know it exists, let alone have the power to execute it properly. So we're looking for someone powerful, knowledgeable about ancient magic, and with a specific grudge against the Silvermoon bloodline. Yes, that narrows it down to what? Maybe a dozen suspects? If we're lucky. Vince's expression was grim. More likely, we're dealing with someone who's been working in the shadows for decades. Someone patient enough to wait 16 years for their curse to fully take hold. Someone with resources enough to manipulate entire packs without being detected. Patricia felt a chill run down her spine. You're talking about someone on par with you. Another Lycan, possibly, or something worse. Vince stood, clearing their plates. But speculation without evidence is pointless. What we need to do is focus on breaking your curse and unlocking your power. Once you have access to your silver moon magic, you'll be able to sense things I can't. Healers like your grandmother could read the magical signatures left on curses, trace them back to their source. So I'm not just learning to fight, I'm learning to be a magical detective. You're learning to survive, Vince corrected. Everything else is secondary to that goal. Patricia stood, her legs protesting the movement. Then I should rest while I can. Something tells me tonight's going to be even harder than this morning was. It will be, Vince confirmed. The mate rejection was fresh, recent. The next wounds we need to address are older, more deeply embedded. They'll fight harder to stay hidden. Patricia paused at the door to her room. Vince, why are you really helping me? I know you said you owed my grandmother a debt, but this seems like more than just repaying an obligation. Vince turned to face her, and for a moment, his carefully controlled expression cracked, revealing something raw and honest underneath. Because 300 years ago, I failed to protect the people who mattered most to me, he said quietly. I let the hunters destroy my pack, kill my family, scatter everything I'd spent centuries building. I went into isolation because I couldn't face the guilt, couldn't bear to watch another generation of wolves suffer because I wasn't strong enough to stop it. He moved closer, his golden eyes intense. Your grandmother gave me a chance at redemption. She trusted me with her greatest treasure, her bloodline, her granddaughter, the future of the Silver Moon power. I'm helping you, because I refuse to fail again. Because you deserve better than what this world has given you. And because maybe, just maybe, if I can keep you alive, and help you claim your power, I can finally forgive myself for all the ways I've failed before. Patricia felt tears prick her eyes. That's a lot of weight to put on one cursed Omega. You're not an Omega, Vince said firmly. You're a princess in hiding, and it's time you started acting like one. Chapter 7. Shadows of the Past. Patricia woke to the sound of chanting. The words were in a language she didn't recognize, ancient and guttural, each syllable seeming to vibrate through the walls of the cabin. She'd only meant to rest for an hour, but the exhaustion from combat training and the mate bond severing had pulled her into a deep, dreamless sleep. Now, as twilight painted the sky purple and gold through her window, she felt oddly refreshed. Her body still ached, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from using muscles that had been dormant too long. She emerged from her room to find the main cabin transformed. The furniture had been pushed to the walls, creating a large open space in the center. Vince had drawn an intricate circle on the wooden floor using what looked like salt mixed with silver powder. Symbols surrounded the circle, some she recognized from her grandmother's old books, others completely foreign. Candles burned at 5 points around the circle, their flames casting dancing shadows across the walls. And in the center of it all stood Vince, shirtless now, his muscled torso covered in silvery scars that seemed to glow in the candlelight. He held an ancient book in one hand, reading from it in that strange, powerful language. He looked up as she approached, his golden eyes reflecting the candlelight like a predator's. You're awake. Good. We need to begin before the moon rises fully. What is all this? Patricia gestured to the circle. A protection ward, a memory circle, and a binding spell to ensure that whatever we uncover tonight stays contained within this space. Vince closed the book, setting it carefully on the table. The wounds we're about to address are older, deeper. They're the ones that shaped who you became. The rejection, the abuse, the constant message that you were worthless. Patricia's stomach twisted. I thought we were going to do this gradually, work up to the hard stuff. We don't have time for gradual, Vince said bluntly. Every hour you spend cursed is an hour whoever wants you dead has to make their move. We need to break through the major wounds tonight, or risk losing the momentum we've built. And if I can't handle it? If the pain is too much? Vince's expression softened slightly. Then I'll pull you out, and we'll try again another night. But Patricia, you need to understand something. The curse feeds on your belief that you can't handle pain. It wants you to think you're too weak, too broken, too damaged to heal. Proving it wrong is half the battle. Patricia looked at the circle, at the symbols that seemed to pulse with power, at the man who'd promised to help her reclaim herself. She thought about spending the rest of her life running, hiding, diminished by a curse she hadn't even known existed. What do I need to do? She asked. Sit in the center of the circle, facing me. Vince stepped carefully over the salt line, moving to the far side. Once we begin, you cannot leave the circle until we're finished. No matter what you see, what you feel, what memories surface, you stay in the circle. Understood? Patricia nodded and stepped into the circle, settling cross-legged on the floor. The moment she crossed the salt line, she felt a shift in the air, like stepping into a room with different atmospheric pressure. Vince sat across from her, close enough that their knees almost touched. Give me your hands. She placed her hands in his, and again felt that surge of power, that sense of touching something vast and ancient, and utterly inhuman. Close your eyes, Vince instructed, and breathe. 3 deep breaths, like your grandmother taught you. Patricia obeyed, sinking into the familiar rhythm. With each breath, she felt herself settling deeper into her own consciousness, becoming aware of the wounds Vince had mentioned. They were there, buried under years of survival instincts and protective walls, pockets of pain she'd never properly addressed, because she'd been too busy just trying to survive each day. I'm going to guide you back. Vince's voice came from very far away. Back to the moments that shaped your belief that you were worthless. We're going to revisit them, not to relive the pain, but to show your younger self the truth, to give her the knowledge she needed to fight back. I don't understand. You will. Now let yourself fall backward, into the first memory, the one that taught you that you weren't enough. Patricia felt herself falling, tumbling through time and consciousness, until she landed in a memory so vivid it felt like she was actually there again. She was 10 years old, standing in the pack house kitchen while her mother worked. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, and sunlight streamed through the windows, painting everything gold. Alpha Owen stood in the doorway, his face hard with anger. You need to tell her the truth, Gloria, he was saying to Patricia's mother. The girl deserves to know what she really is. She's a child, Gloria Moses replied, her voice strained. She deserves to have a childhood before the weight of our bloodline crushes her. Your bloodline is a curse on this pack. Owen spat. Rosemary should have stayed where she belonged, should have fulfilled her duty to the Lycan King instead of running away to play house with a common wolf. Now we're stuck with the consequences of her cowardice. Young Patricia had been hiding behind the pantry door, listening to words she didn't fully understand, but she understood the anger in Owen's voice, understood that somehow, she was the problem. If it were up to me, I'd turn all 3 of you out of this pack, Owen continued. But your husband is too useful to lose, and I'm not heartless enough to send a child into the wilderness. Yet, Owen, please. Just keep her ignorant, the Alpha interrupted. Keep her small and weak in Omega, and maybe the curse will pass over this pack entirely. But if I ever sense that she's developing her mother's gifts, if I ever catch even a hint of Silver Moon magic from that child, I'll declare you all rogue without hesitation. The memory shifted, and Patricia was suddenly 6 years older, 16, standing in a forest clearing with the other adolescent wolves during their first shift ceremony. She could feel the terror of that moment, the way her body had fought against the transformation. She'd been the last to shift, and when her wolf finally emerged, it had been small, russet brown, unremarkable in every way. The disappointment on her father's face had been crushing. The disgust on Owen's face had been worse. But it was Kitty's reaction that had truly broken something in Patricia. Her childhood friend had looked at her with such contempt, such immediate rejection, as if their years of friendship had never existed at all. Omega, someone whispered. Worthless, another voice added. Weak. Pathetic. The words had built on each other, a chorus of condemnation that had followed Patricia for the next 7 years. Stop. Vince's voice cut through the memory. Look at me, Patricia. Look at me now. She turned, and somehow Vince was there in the memory with her, his adult form standing beside her 16-year-old self. Do you see it? He asked, pointing to her younger self's wolf form. Look closer. past the curse. Patricia looked and gasped. There, beneath the russet brown fur, she could see faint silver markings. They pulsed like a heartbeat, barely visible, as if something was actively suppressing them. The curse took hold the moment you shifted, Vince explained. That's what made you appear Omega. Not your true nature, but magic designed to hide your true nature. The memory shifted again, moving forward to her parents' funeral. Patricia was 16, standing in the rain, while 2 coffins were lowered into the ground. The pack stood around her in a loose circle, but no one came close. No one offered comfort. She was utterly alone. Rogue attack, Owen had announced at the funeral. Alan Mason and Gloria Moses died protecting the pack's borders. They will be remembered as heroes. But Patricia had seen her father's body. She'd seen the wounds. They hadn't been made by wolf claws or teeth. They'd been made by something else. Something with silver weapons and human hands. Hunters, Vince said, his voice heavy with old anger. I confirmed it after the fact, when Rosemary asked me to investigate. Your parents were targeted specifically, hunted down, and murdered to ensure that Gloria's healing abilities died with her. Young Patricia, in the memory, stood in the rain, crying silent tears that no one acknowledged. She was an orphan now, completely dependent on a pack that barely tolerated her existence. That was the moment Patricia realized with sudden clarity, when she'd truly started to believe she was worthless. Not because of anything she'd done, but because when she'd needed her pack most, they'd turned away. I was so alone, Patricia whispered. You were surrounded by cowards, Vince corrected. By wolves too afraid of Owen's wrath to show kindness to a grieving child. That's not the same thing as being alone. The memory shifted again, racing forward through years of small cruelties. Kitty's cutting remarks. Blake's unwanted attention. The way pack members would fall silent when she entered a room, as if her presence wasn't worth acknowledging. Each moment was a paper cut, seemingly minor on its own but accumulated into something that bled her slowly dry. Enough, Vince's voice commanded, and suddenly Patricia was back in the circle, tears streaming down her face, her hands gripping his so tightly her knuckles had gone white. I can't, she gasped. It's too much. Vince, it's too… Yes, you can, he said firmly. Because I'm going to show you what you couldn't see then. I'm going to show you the truth that was hidden from you. He closed his eyes, and suddenly Patricia felt his power flowing into her, warm and silver and ancient. It filled her consciousness, pushing against the walls she'd built around her pain. And then those walls shattered. Light exploded behind her eyes, and Patricia saw herself for the first time without the filter of the curse. She saw the moments when her healing abilities had manifested without her realizing it. The time she'd touched a wounded bird, and it had miraculously recovered. The way plants seemed to grow faster when she tended them. The fact that despite years of abuse, she'd never suffered a serious injury that required a hospital visit. She'd been healing herself instinctively, using magic she didn't know she possessed. She saw the fear in Owen's eyes every time he looked at her, the way he'd kept her close and suppressed specifically because he recognized the threat she represented. She saw Lucas fighting with his father, arguing on her behalf more times than she'd ever known, trying to protect her in the only ways he could without outright defying his alpha. She saw Tanya's cruelty for what it really was, jealousy. Because even cursed, even suppressed, Patricia had carried herself with more grace than Tanya ever could. You were never worthless, Vince said, and his voice seemed to echo through her entire being. You were dangerous, powerful, a threat to everyone who benefited from keeping the Silvermoon bloodline suppressed. They made you believe you were Omega, because the alternative was too terrifying for them to contemplate. Patricia felt something crack inside her chest, and suddenly she was sobbing great, heaving sobs that seemed to tear their way out of her. But these weren't tears of pain. They were tears of release, of finally letting go of years of internalized lies. I believe you, she gasped between sobs. I believe you. Good, Vince said. Then burn with me. Burn it all away. His power surged again. And this time Patricia didn't fight it. She let the silver fire consume every memory of self-hatred, every moment of believing she was less than, every lie she'd internalized about her worth. The pain was immense, but it was also cleansing, like burning away infection to reveal healthy tissue underneath. Patricia screamed. But it wasn't a scream of agony. It was a scream of defiance, of rage, of finally refusing to carry the weight of other people's cruelty any longer. The candles around the circle flared brighter, their flames reaching toward the ceiling. The salt line began to glow with silver light. And somewhere deep inside Patricia, something that had been sleeping for 16 years began to wake up. Her wolf stirred, and for the first time since her first shift, Patricia felt her properly. Not small and russet brown and weak, but large and powerful and covered in silver markings that glowed like moonlight. "That's it," Vince encouraged, his own power wrapping around hers like a protective shield. "Show me your true form. Let her out." Patricia felt the shift beginning. But it was different this time. Not the painful, reluctant transformation she was used to, but something natural, powerful, right. Her bones began to reshape, but before the transformation could complete, a sound cut through the night that made both of them freeze. Howls. Multiple wolves, close to the border of Vince's territory. And beneath the howls, Patricia heard something else. The mechanical whir of vehicles, the sharp crack of silver bullets being loaded into weapons. Vince's eyes snapped open, glowing bright gold with fury. Hunters, and they've brought reinforcements. Already? Patricia's voice was hoarse from screaming. But we've barely started breaking the curse, which means someone was watching, waiting for exactly this moment. Vince stood in one fluid motion, pulling Patricia up with him. They knew that breaking the curse would make you vulnerable. They planned for it. The howls came again, closer now. And this time Patricia recognized one of the voices. Blake Todd, her pack's head warrior. They sent trackers, she realized with horror. Owen sent his wolves to help the hunters find me. Of course he did, Vince said grimly. He can't afford to let you survive. Not now that you're starting to unlock your power. He moved toward the window, his entire body radiating deadly intent. Stay in the circle. Don't leave it no matter what happens. The protection wards will keep you safe as long as you don't cross the salt line. Where are you going? Vince turned, and the smile on his face was terrifying. To remind the world why Lycans were once the most feared predators in existence. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Patricia? If I don't make it back. There's a box under the floorboards beneath that bed. Inside is everything your grandmother wanted you to have, including instructions on how to complete the curse breaking on your own. Use it. Vince, wait. But he was already gone. The cabin door slamming behind him. Patricia stood alone in the glowing circle, listening to the sounds of approaching danger, and felt her newly awakened wolf howl with frustration. Every instinct screamed at her to help, to fight, to do something other than hide in a protective circle while the being who'd promised to help her faced an army alone. But Vince had given her an order. And more importantly, he'd given her a reason to survive. She sank back down in the circle, closed her eyes, and reached for the power that was finally starting to wake up inside her. If hunters were coming, if her own pack had betrayed her to them, then she would need every ounce of strength she could muster. The Silvermoon bloodline had been sleeping for 16 years. It was time to wake up. Chapter 8. The Hunt. The sounds of battle erupted outside the cabin with a violence that shook the windows in their frames. Patricia heard Vince's roar, not a howl, but something deeper, more primal, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the earth itself. It was followed by screams, the sharp crack of gunfire, and the wet sound of flesh tearing. She forced herself to stay in the circle, forced herself to trust Vince's command, even as every instinct demanded she run out there and help. Instead, she closed her eyes and reached inward, searching for the power that had started to stir during the memory work. Come on, she thought desperately. Wake up. I need you. We need you. Her wolf responded, stronger now than she'd ever felt her before. The curse was still there, still binding most of her power, but the cracks Vince had created were letting light through. Patricia could feel magic humming under her skin, ancient and powerful, waiting for the right moment to break free completely. A window shattered, spraying glass across the cabin floor. Patricia's eyes snapped open to see a figure climbing through, human-shaped, dressed in black tactical gear, face hidden behind a mask. The hunter's weapon was already raised, a modified rifle loaded with what Patricia instinctively knew were silver bullets. But the hunter stopped at the edge of the salt circle, unable to cross. The protection wards flared bright silver, pushing back against the intruder's presence. Well, well, the hunter said, voice distorted by a modulator in the mask. The rumors are true. The Lycan King still knows the old protections. The hunter circled the perimeter of the circle, testing for weaknesses. Smart girl, staying in the ward. But wards don't last forever, and my employer is very patient. Who sent you? Patricia demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. Does it matter? The hunter shrugged. You're dead either way. Might be tonight, might be next week, might be next year, but you don't survive when someone puts out a contract on Silver Moon blood. Not in my experience. Silver Moon blood? Patricia's heart raced. You've hunted others like me? Hunted and killed. The hunter sounded almost bored. Your mother was surprisingly difficult. Took 3 of us to bring her down, and she still managed to wound 2 before she died. Your father was easier, he had no magic, just loyalty. Died trying to protect his mate like a good little wolf. Rage exploded through Patricia, hot and blinding. The protection ward flared brighter in response to her emotions, pulsing with silver light that made the hunter take a step back. You murdered my parents, Patricia said, her voice shaking with fury. You hunted them down like animals. We're all animals, sweetheart. Some of us just have better weapons. The hunter raised the rifle again, aiming at Patricia through the barrier. These bullets are blessed with old magic, specifically designed to pierce supernatural protections. They won't kill you through the ward, but they'll hurt, and pain breaks concentration. Break concentration enough, and you'll step out of that circle without even realizing it. The hunter fired. The bullet slammed into the ward with a flash of light that temporarily blinded Patricia. She felt the impact reverberate through the protection circle, felt the ward weaken slightly. Not much, but enough to tell her that the hunter hadn't been bluffing. Another shot, another flash. The ward held, but Patricia could feel it straining. Outside, the sounds of battle continued. She heard more howls, Blake and the other Silverpine trackers, engaging with something that made them scream in terror. She heard Vince's voice, commanding in that ancient language, and felt pulses of power that made the air itself seem to shudder. But she also heard more vehicles arriving, more footsteps, more weapons being readied. There were too many of them. Even a Lycan King couldn't fight an entire hunting party and a pack of hostile wolves simultaneously. I have to help him, Patricia thought desperately. But if I leave the circle, I'm dead. Unless... Patricia looked at the floorboards beneath the bed in her room. The box Vince had mentioned, containing her grandmother's instructions. If Rosemary had left her away to complete the curse breaking alone, maybe there was something in there that could help her now. But getting to the box meant leaving the circle, and leaving the circle meant facing the hunter with the blessed bullets. The hunter fired again, and this time Patricia felt the ward crack. Not break, but definitely crack. Maybe 3 or 4 more shots and the protection would fail completely. She had to make a choice. Stay safe and watch Vince die defending her, or risk everything for a chance to save them both. Patricia thought about her parents, murdered by these same hunters. She thought about 16 years of living small and afraid, of letting others define her worth, of accepting cruelty as if it was deserved. She thought about Vince's words, "You're a princess in hiding. It's time you started acting like one." You know what? Patricia said, standing up. I'm really tired of hiding. The hunter's posture shifted, became more alert. Don't be stupid, girl. You step out of that circle, and you die. Maybe. Patricia agreed. Or maybe I'm stronger than you think. Maybe the Silver Moon bloodline isn't as dead as your employer wants to believe. She took a deep breath and stepped out of the circle. The hunter fired immediately. But Patricia was already moving, diving toward her bedroom with speed she didn't know she possessed. The bullet grazed her shoulder, burning like acid where the blessed silver made contact with her skin. She bit back a scream and kept moving. Another shot. This one missed completely. Patricia crashed through the bedroom door and slammed it behind her, throwing the simple lock. It wouldn't hold for long, but she didn't need long. She just needed 30 seconds. She dropped to her knees beside the bed and pried at the floorboards with her fingers. One came loose, revealing a hollow space beneath. Inside was a small wooden box, carved with the same Silver Moon symbols that marked the protection circle in the main room. Patricia grabbed it and wrenched it open. Inside were 3 things: a leather-bound journal covered in her grandmother's handwriting, a silver dagger with a moonstone set in its hilt, and a vial of liquid that glowed faintly blue in the darkness. The bedroom door exploded inward as the hunter kicked it open. "Nowhere left to run, little wolf." Patricia's hand closed around the dagger's hilt, and the moment she touched it, power surged through her arm like lightning. The weapon recognized her bloodline, accepted her claim, and bonded to her in a way that felt ancient and absolute. She turned to face the hunter, the dagger raised, and felt her wolf surge forward with newfound strength. "You're right," Patricia said, her voice different now, layered with something that sounded like multiple voices speaking in harmony. "No more running." The hunter fired, but Patricia was faster. She moved on pure instinct, the dagger flashing in an arc that deflected the bullet with a shower of sparks. The blessed silver that was supposed to pierce supernatural protections couldn't stand against Silvermoon's steel. Patricia lunged forward, closing the distance between them faster than any Omega should have been able to move. The dagger found its mark, sinking into the hunter's shoulder. She felt the weapon pulse with power, and the hunter screamed as silver fire spread from the wound. "Impossible," the hunter gasped, stumbling backward. "You're suppressed. The curse should have." "The curse is breaking," Patricia said, ripping the dagger free. "And you just made a very serious mistake." She kicked the hunter in the chest, sending the assassin flying backward through the broken bedroom door. The hunter crashed into the table in the main room, scattering Vince's ancient books across the floor. Patricia followed, the dagger still gripped in her hand, feeling power coursing through her veins like wildfire. She wasn't fully free of the curse, yet she could feel it still binding her, still suppressing most of her strength. But the combination of Vince's memory work and her grandmother's dagger had cracked it open enough for her true nature to bleed through. She was fast, she was strong, and for the first time in her life, she was dangerous. The hunter tried to raise the rifle again, but Patricia was already there. She grabbed the weapon with her free hand and crushed the barrel, the metal crumpling like paper in her grip. The hunter stared at the ruined weapon in shock. "Who sent you?" Patricia demanded, pressing the dagger against the hunter's throat. "Who paid for my family's deaths?" "I don't know names," the hunter gasped. "Contacts are anonymous. But the contract has been active for decades. Someone powerful. Someone with old money and older grudges. Not good enough." "Wait." The hunter's hands came up in surrender. "There's a mark. All the contracts for Silvermoon blood carry the same mark. A black rose entwined with silver thorns. That's all I know, I swear." Patricia pulled the dagger back slightly. "A black rose? What does that mean?" "It's a signature. Whoever's behind this, they've been using that symbol for at least 50 years. That's as far back as the guild records go." The hunter coughed, and blood spattered the inside of the mask. "You really hurt me, you know. That dagger. It's not just silver. It's cursed. Made to kill hunters specifically." "Good," Patricia said coldly. "Then maybe you'll think twice before accepting contracts on innocent people." An explosion outside rocked the cabin, and Patricia heard Vince roar again, this time in what sounded like pain. "There are 15 of us," the hunter said, almost conversational now. "And 20 wolves from your old pack. Even a Lycan King can't handle those odds. You should run while you still can. Take your grandmother's dagger and disappear. Live to fight another day." Patricia looked toward the window, seeing flashes of light and hearing the chaos of battle. The hunter was right. She and Vince were outnumbered, outgunned, and she was still mostly cursed. Running made sense. But Patricia was done making the sensible choice, done prioritizing survival over everything else, done letting fear dictate her actions. "No," she said firmly. "I'm done running." She brought the dagger down in a swift arc, and the hunter's body went still. Patricia felt a flicker of remorse. She'd never killed anyone before, but it was drowned out by the knowledge that this person had murdered her parents, had been paid to murder her, and wouldn't have hesitated to kill her if their positions were reversed. Patricia grabbed the hunter's tactical vest, found 3 more loaded magazines, and a combat knife that would serve as a backup weapon. She was arming herself when she noticed the journal had fallen open, revealing a page in her grandmother's handwriting. "If you're reading this in desperation, child, then know that the quickest way to break the rite of diminishment is also the most dangerous." The vial contains distilled moonlight essence of the moon goddess herself, preserved through old magic. Drink it, and the curse will shatter immediately. But be warned. Without proper preparation, without having addressed the wounds that feed the curse, the sudden release of power can destroy you from the inside. Your body might not be able to handle what you truly are. Use this only if death is the alternative. And if you survive, remember that power means nothing without wisdom to guide it. Patricia looked at the vial, glowing softly blue in the wreckage of the cabin. She could hear Vince outside, still fighting, still holding off an impossible number of enemies. Death was absolutely the alternative. She uncorked the vial, whispered a prayer to the moon goddess, and drank. The effect was instantaneous and agonizing. Power exploded through Patricia's body like a supernova. The curse fought back, trying to contain the surge, but the moonlight was too pure, too strong. Patricia felt the rite of diminishment shatter like glass, felt 16 years of suppression break away all at once. Her wolf burst free with a howl that shook the cabin's foundation. But she wasn't the small russet-brown omega she'd been for so long. She was massive, easily the size of an alpha-born wolf, covered in silver fur that seemed to glow with its own internal light. The markings she'd glimpsed during the memory work were fully visible now, ancient symbols etched across her coat in patterns that spoke of healing, protection, and royal bloodlines. Patricia's human consciousness merged with her wolf's instincts, and together they were something new, something powerful, something that had been waiting 16 years to be born. She burst through the cabin door on 4 legs, the silver moon dagger somehow still gripped in her jaws, and entered the battle with a roar that made even the hunters pause in fear. Vince was in his Lycan form, massive, silver-white, covered in blood, both his own and his enemies. He'd killed at least 6 hunters and twice as many silverpine wolves, but the rest were wearing him down through sheer numbers. He looked up as Patricia charged into the fray, and she saw surprise flash across his inhuman features. Then he smiled, sharp and deadly. "About time," he said in a voice that was more growl than words. "I was beginning to think I'd have to have all the fun myself." Patricia didn't answer with words. She answered with violence. She crashed into the nearest cluster of hunters, her enhanced strength sending them flying. The dagger in her jaws flashed, and 2 more went down before they could even aim their weapons. She moved like liquid silver, faster than any of them could track, her grandmother's magic flowing through her like a song. A silverpine wolf lunged at her, not Blake, but someone she recognized from pack training sessions. She caught them mid-leap and threw them into a tree hard enough to crack the trunk. "She's broken the curse," someone shouted. Fall back, fall back." But Vince was already there, cutting off their retreat. Together, he and Patricia became a 2-wolf army, moving in perfect synchronization despite never having fought together before. Where Vince was raw power and centuries of battle experience, Patricia was speed and instinct enhanced by healing magic that let her push her body beyond normal limits. They fought like they were made for this, made for each other. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. Chapter 9. The Revelation. The battle raged through the night like a storm of teeth and silver. Patricia lost herself in the flow of combat, her newly awakened instincts guiding every movement. The silver moon magic sang through her veins, healing minor wounds almost as quickly as she received them, lending her strength that should have been impossible for a wolf her age. She was magnificent, she was powerful, she was everything the curse had spent 16 years trying to suppress. And she was furious. Every hunter she faced had been complicit in her parents' murder. Every silverpine wolf who'd come to help them had betrayed the most fundamental law of pack life: you didn't hand over your own to hunters, no matter what the alpha commanded. Patricia showed them no mercy. She'd just taken down another hunter when she heard a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Patricia, stop, please." She whipped around to find Lucas standing at the edge of the clearing, his wolf form bloodied and exhausted. Behind him stood 2 more silverpine wolves, but they hung back, clearly unwilling to engage. Patricia shifted partially back to human form, an ability she'd never possessed before the curse broke, keeping her wolf's enhanced strength while regaining the ability to speak. "You dare come here?" Her voice carried the layered quality of human and wolf speaking together, ancient power thrumming beneath every word. "You rejected me, declared me rogue, and now you help hunters invade Lycan territory? What's next, Lucas? Will you pull the trigger yourself? I'm not here to help them. Lucas shifted to human form as well, raising his hands in surrender. I'm here to warn you. Patricia, my father has made a deal with someone powerful. This attack tonight, it's just the beginning. Tell me something I don't know, Patricia snarled. Who is it? Who wants the Silver Moon bloodline dead? I don't know their name. My father refuses to say it, even to me. But Patricia, they promised him something in exchange for your death. They promised him. Lucas's voice broke. They promised him the ability to absorb Lycan powers, to become something more than Alpha. And he's desperate enough to believe them. Vince appeared at Patricia's side, his massive Lycan form towering over both of them. Absorbing Lycan powers? That's impossible. Only a Lycan can be born, not made. Unless someone's found a way to change that, Lucas said desperately. My father has been obsessed with power for years. Ever since he learned about Patricia's bloodline, he's been researching old magic, ancient rituals. He believes that Silver Moon blood is the key to some kind of transformation spell. Patricia felt ice run through her veins. He wants to use my blood in a ritual? Not just your blood. Your death. Lucas took a step forward, and both Vince and Patricia tensed. The ritual requires the sacrifice of a Silver Moon descendant during a lunar eclipse, and there's one coming in 3 days. 3 days, Patricia repeated numbly. Which is why he sent hunters tonight. Lucas continued. He wanted you dead before you could fully break the curse, before you could become powerful enough to defend yourself. But if you've broken it, he looked at her transformed state, awe mixing with fear in his eyes. If you've truly unlocked your Silver Moon magic, then you might actually stand a chance. Against what? Vince demanded. Your father and his delusions of grandeur? Against whoever he's working with. Lucas's expression was haunted. I've seen them, Patricia. Once. They came to meet with my father in secret, and I followed. I couldn't get close enough to hear the whole conversation, but I saw them. Tall, hooded, radiating power that made my wolf want to submit and run at the same time. They're not human. They're not even normal supernatural. There's something else. Something old. Patricia and Vince exchanged glances. Describe this person, Vince commanded. Everything you remember. Dark robes. A voice like stone grinding against stone. And when their hood fell back for just a moment, Lucas shuddered. I saw eyes that were completely black. No whites, no iris. Just darkness. Vince went very still. A void walker. What's a void walker? Patricia asked. Ancient beings from before the moon goddess established her domain. They fed on magic, on life force, on the essence of supernatural beings. Vince's voice was grim. They were supposed to be extinct. The goddess herself hunted them down millennia ago because they threatened to consume all of creation. Apparently she missed one, Lucas said. And it's been hiding, planning, working through pawns like my father to achieve whatever goal it's pursuing. Patricia's mind raced. The black rose symbol. The signature on all the contracts to kill Silver Moon blood. That's not a person, it's this Void Walker. Most likely, Vince agreed. Void Walkers don't just consume power randomly. They're strategic. If it's been targeting your bloodline specifically for decades, there's a reason. He turned to Lucas. What else did you hear? Anything about why it wants the Silver Moon line eliminated? Lucas hesitated. The ritual your father mentioned. It's not just about making him powerful, it's about opening something. The Void Walker called it the door between realms. They need Silver Moon blood because your bloodline holds the key to. A howl cut through his words, followed by the sound of vehicles retreating. The remaining hunters were pulling out, and the Silver Pine wolves who'd survived were following. They're regrouping, Vince said. They'll be back with reinforcements. Or they've accomplished what they came for, Patricia said slowly. A horrible realization was dawning. This wasn't a serious attempt to kill me. This was a test. They wanted to see if I'd broken the curse. Wanted to measure my power level. And you just gave them a full demonstration, Lucas said quietly. Patricia, you need to run. Leave this territory. Leave this region entirely. The Void Walker won't stop until... I'm not running, Patricia interrupted. I'm done running, done hiding, done letting fear dictate my choices. She looked at Vince. You said void walkers feed on supernatural essence. What would happen if one consumed a Lycan? They'd become nearly unstoppable, Vince admitted. A void walker with Lycan power could tear through dimensional barriers, could potentially undo the protections the moon goddess put in place to contain them. And if they consumed silver moon magic? Vince's expression darkened. Silver moon magic is healing, life-giving. It's the opposite of what voidwalkers represent. If one managed to corrupt that magic, to twist it into something dark, they could potentially heal themselves from any wound, regenerate indefinitely. They'd be immortal in the truest sense. Patricia nodded slowly, pieces falling into place. So the voidwalker needs two things: Lycan power to break dimensional barriers, and silver moon magic to achieve true immortality. That's why it's been targeting my family while manipulating alphas like Owen who want Lycan abilities for themselves. It's been playing both sides, Vince said, understanding dawning in his golden eyes, promising Owen power, while actually planning to use him as a pawn to acquire both sources of magic. The lunar eclipse in 3 days, Patricia said. That's when it plans to make its move. When it's strong enough to... She stopped, a wave of dizziness washing over her. The adrenaline that had been carrying her through the battle was fading, and she was suddenly aware of how much the moonlight essence had cost her. Her body was burning through energy at an unsustainable rate, and the wounds she'd been healing automatically were starting to slow in their recovery. Patricia? Vince caught her as she stumbled. What's wrong? The moonlight, she gasped. I drank it without proper preparation, and now my body is. It's trying to process power it's not ready for. Vince, I can feel it. If I don't. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed into his arms. The silver fur receded as her body involuntarily shifted back to human form, leaving her naked and shaking in the cool night air. Lucas immediately looked away, shrugging off his shirt and tossing it to Vince. She needs a healer. Someone who knows silver moon magic. There are no silver moon healers left, Vince said, scooping Patricia up as if she weighed nothing. Rosemary was the last, and she's gone. Then what do? We stabilize her, Vince said, already moving toward the cabin, and hope that her own healing abilities are strong enough to save her from her own power. Patricia tried to speak, to tell them that she could feel her magic eating her from the inside, but the words wouldn't come. The world was spinning, her vision blurring at the edges. She'd broken the curse. She'd unlocked her true power. She'd fought alongside a Lycan King and survived. And now she was dying because her body couldn't handle what she'd become. So much for being a princess, she thought with bitter irony, as consciousness began to slip away. But then she felt a warmth spreading from her chest outward, like someone had lit a candle in the darkness. Her grandmother's necklace, the silver wolf pendant she'd worn since her 18th birthday, was glowing against her skin. And with the glow came a voice. Not audible, but felt deep in her soul. Her grandmother's voice, speaking across the boundary of death itself. Breathe, little wolf. Your body knows what to do. Trust your magic. Trust yourself. The power isn't killing you, your fear of it is. Let go. Let it flow through you instead of fighting to contain it. Patricia stopped struggling against the power raging inside her. She stopped trying to control it, to suppress it, to make it behave the way she thought it should. She simply let go. The magic flooded through her like a river breaking through a dam, wild and untamed and utterly free. It rushed through every cell, every fiber of her being, rewriting something fundamental in her nature. And then, slowly, it began to settle. Not diminishing, but finding its natural rhythm within her. Like a wild animal learning to trust its keeper, the power recognized that Patricia wasn't its enemy. She was its vessel, its home, the being it had been waiting 16 years to fully inhabit. Patricia's eyes snapped open, glowing pure silver. I'm okay, she gasped. Vince, I'm okay. He looked down at her, still carrying her toward the cabin, and she saw something like relief flash across his features. You're sure? I'm sure. Patricia could feel it now. The power settled into her bones like it had always belonged there, no longer fighting against her but working with her. It was just adjustment. My body had to remember how to hold this much magic. Vince set her down carefully on the cabin's porch. Lucas stood a respectful distance away, his expression conflicted as he watched them. The necklace, Patricia said, touching the silver pendant. My grandmother left one final gift. A guide to help me through the transition. Rosemary always did think of everything, Vince said quietly. He turned to Lucas. You need to leave. If your alpha discovers you came here to warn us. He already knows, Lucas interrupted. I'm not going back to Silverpine. My father has crossed too many lines, made too many deals with darkness. I can't serve an alpha who would sacrifice pack members to hunters, who would ally with a Voidwalker for personal power. He looked at Patricia. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I failed you in every way that matters. But if you'll allow it, I want to help. I want to stand against my father and whoever he's working with. Patricia studied him for a long moment. The mate bond was gone, severed completely by Vince's burning. She felt nothing when she looked at Lucas except a distant sort of pity for the man who'd been too weak to fight for what he wanted. But she also remembered the boy who'd been her friend, who'd tried to protect her in the small ways he could, and she thought about the bigger picture, about facing a Voidwalker and a corrupted alpha in 3 days with only Vince at her side. They could use another ally. You can stay, she said finally. But understand this, Lucas. I'm not the Omega you rejected. I'm not the girl who would have forgiven anything to keep the peace. If you betray us, if you put us in danger through weakness or misplaced loyalty, I will end you myself. Is that clear? Lucas nodded solemnly. Crystal clear. Good. Patricia stood, wrapping Lucas's shirt around herself more securely. Then here's what we're going to do. We have 3 days until the lunar eclipse. 3 days to prepare for a battle against a Voidwalker, a corrupted alpha, and whoever else they've recruited to their cause. That's suicide, Lucas said. We should be running, hiding, finding reinforcements. There are no reinforcements, Patricia interrupted. The supernatural world has been ignoring the threat of Voidwalkers for millennia because they thought they were extinct. Even if we could convince other packs or covens to help us, they'd never mobilize in time. She's right, Vince said. This fight is ours. But Patricia, you've only just broken your curse. You haven't had time to learn to control your power, to understand the full extent of your abilities. Fighting a Voidwalker now is exactly what my grandmother prepared me for, Patricia finished. Why do you think she left all those books? All those instructions? She knew this day would come. She knew that eventually, the darkness targeting our bloodline would show itself. Patricia moved to the cabin's ruined doorway, looking out at the destruction of the battlefield. We have 3 days. So we use them. We train. We plan. We learn everything we can about Voidwalkers and how to kill them. Assuming they can be killed, Lucas muttered. Patricia turned to face them both, and in the moonlight, her silver eyes glowed with determination and power. Everything can be killed. It's just a matter of finding the right weapon. She thought of her grandmother's dagger, still stained with hunter's blood. She thought of the books filled with ancient knowledge. She thought of Vince's centuries of experience and Lucas's insider knowledge of Owen's plans. They were outnumbered, outgunned, facing an enemy that had been planning this confrontation for decades. But they had something the Voidwalker didn't. They had nothing left to lose. 3 days, Patricia repeated. And then we end this. Chapter 10, The Eclipse. 3 days had never felt so short and so long at the same time. Patricia spent every waking moment preparing for the confrontation she knew was coming. Vince drilled her relentlessly in combat, pushing her newly awakened powers to their limits and beyond. Her silver moon magic was extraordinary. She could heal wounds that would have killed normal wolves, could sense life force from hundreds of yards away, could even manipulate the energy of living things to strengthen allies or weaken enemies. But power without control was just chaos waiting to happen. Again, Vince commanded, his golden eyes tracking her movements as she practiced shifting between forms. Faster. In a real fight, hesitation means death. Patricia gritted her teeth and shifted, her body flowing from human to wolf and back again in the span of a heartbeat. It was getting easier, more natural, but it still cost energy she wasn't sure she'd have in abundance during an actual battle. Lucas proved surprisingly useful despite his complicated history with them. He'd stolen documents from his father's office before fleeing Silverpine, detailed notes about the ritual, maps showing where it would take place, and most importantly, information about the Voidwalker's weaknesses. According to this, Lucas said, spreading the papers across the cabin's repaired table. Voidwalkers are vulnerable during dimensional transitions. When they're pulling power from the void to fuel their magic, there's a moment, maybe 3 seconds, where their physical form becomes unstable. 3 seconds isn't much, Patricia observed, studying the ancient diagram that accompanied the notes. It showed a figure wreathed in darkness, with specific points marked on its body in red ink. It's enough if you're fast enough, Vince said. And with Silvermoon's speed enhanced by your healing magic, you're faster than anything the Voidwalker has likely encountered in centuries. There's more, Lucas continued. The ritual requires specific components. Silvermoon. Blood. Obviously. A vessel to contain stolen Lycan essence. My father believes he'll be that vessel. And a tether to anchor the Voidwalker to this dimension while it performs the transformation. What kind of tether? Patricia asked. Something with strong emotional resonance to the Silvermoon bloodline. Lucas met her eyes. Something that belonged to someone you loved. Something that carries the weight of grief and loss. Patricia's hand went instinctively to her grandmother's necklace. They'll need an artifact from my family. Which they don't have, Vince pointed out. Everything your grandmother owned is either destroyed or in this cabin. Unless they took something from my parents' graves, Patricia said quietly. Or from our old house. Lucas, what happened to my family's belongings after they died? Lucas's expression turned grim. My father had everything boxed up and put in the pack house basement. He said it was standard procedure for deceased pack members, but now. He trailed off, meaningfully. Now we know he was collecting potential tether objects, Patricia finished. Anger burned hot in her chest. He's been planning this since before my parents even died. All of it, their murder, my suppression, the rejection, it was all leading to this moment. Then, we use that against him, Vince said firmly. He thinks he knows what to expect. He thinks you're still the frightened Omega he terrorized for years. We show him exactly how wrong he is. The night of the lunar eclipse arrived with unusual clarity. No clouds marred the sky, and the moon hung full and heavy, already beginning its journey into Earth's shadow. Patricia stood outside the cabin, dressed in practical combat clothing Lucas had acquired, her grandmother's dagger strapped to her thigh, and the silver necklace glowing faintly against her skin. Ready? Vince asked, appearing beside her in his human form. He dressed for battle, too dark clothing that wouldn't restrict movement, no jewelry or accessories that could be used against him. No, Patricia admitted. But I don't think anyone's ever truly ready to face a creature from before creation. We just do it anyway. Lucas emerged from the cabin, carrying a pack filled with supplies. I've marked the location on the map. It's an old stone circle about 5 miles north of here, right on the border between Lycan territory and what used to be Silver Pine land, neutral ground technically. How many wolves will Owen bring? Patricia asked. All of them, Lucas said quietly. Every wolf capable of fighting. He's told the pack this is a holy mission, that they're helping him ascend to protect them all from outside threats. They don't know about the Voidwalker. They think they're just there to witness their alpha's transformation. So we'll be facing the entire Silver Pine pack plus a Voidwalker, plus hunters who may or may not show up as backup, Patricia summarized. Those are terrible odds. Yes, Vince agreed. Which is why we're not going to fight them all. We're going to fight smart. He pulled out his own map, marked with strategic positions. The ritual requires perfect astronomical alignment. That gives us a window of maybe 20 minutes where the moon is fully eclipsed. During that time, the Voidwalker will be focused on the spell. Owen will be focused on his transformation, and the pack will be focused on watching. That's when we strike, Patricia said, understanding dawning. Exactly. We let them begin the ritual, let them think everything is going according to plan. And then, when they're most vulnerable, most distracted, Vince's smile was sharp and cold. We destroy everything they've worked for. There's one problem, Lucas interjected. The ritual requires your blood, Patricia. Which means they'll be expecting you. If you don't show up, they can't complete it. Owen will know something's wrong. Then I'll give them what they expect, Patricia said, an idea forming. I'll let them capture me. Absolutely not, Vince said immediately. Think about it, Patricia argued. If I'm already there, already positioned where they need me for the ritual, they won't be watching the perimeter. They won't expect an attack, because they'll think they've already won. Or they'll kill you the moment they have you, Vince countered. Patricia, you're powerful, but you're not invincible. One silver blade in the right place. And all of this preparation means nothing. He's right, Lucas said reluctantly. My father won't take chances with you, not after seeing what you can do. Patricia looked between them, frustration building. So what do you suggest? We charge in and hope for the best? We use a distraction, Vince said. Something big enough to divide their attention but not so obvious that it tips them off to our real plan. He turned to Lucas. You said your father believes you've gone rogue, correct? Yes. He's declared me a traitor to the pack. Good. Then you're going to show up at that ritual and offer your father what he wants most, a way to prove his power in front of his entire pack. Lucas's eyes widened. You want me to challenge him? For the alpha position. A formal challenge, witnessed by the pack and conducted under traditional law, Vince confirmed. It's the one thing Owen can't ignore without looking weak in front of his wolves. He'll have to accept, which means he'll have to delay the ritual until the challenge is resolved. That only buys us a few minutes, Patricia protested. The eclipse window is narrow. A few minutes is all we need, Vince said. While Owen is distracted fighting Lucas, while the pack is focused on the challenge, you and I infiltrate the ritual site. We destroy the tether, kill the Void Walker during its vulnerable moment, and end this before Owen even realizes what's happening. Patricia studied the map, running through the plan in her mind. It was risky, relied on too many variables falling perfectly into place, but it was also their best shot at survival. All right, she said finally. We do it your way. But Lucas, she turned to face him directly. You understand what this means, don't you? Challenging your father in front of the pack. Even if we win tonight, even if we stop the Void Walker, the pack will never fully accept you as alpha. You'll always be the son who betrayed his father. I know, Lucas said quietly, but some things are more important than acceptance, like making sure the pack survives at all, like standing up to evil instead of enabling it. He met her eyes, like trying to make amends for being too weak to fight for what mattered when it actually counted. Patricia nodded slowly. There was nothing more to say. They had a plan. They had their weapons. And in less than 2 hours the lunar eclipse would reach its peak. Time to end this. The stone circle was exactly as ancient and ominous as Patricia had expected. 12 massive stones arranged in a perfect circle, each one carved with symbols that predated modern language. The Silver Pine pack had gathered in a loose perimeter around the circle, maybe 60 wolves in total, all watching their alpha with expressions ranging from reverence to uncertainty. Owen Kane stood in the center of the circle, dressed in ceremonial robes that looked ridiculous on his bulky frame. Beside him stood a figure in dark robes, the Void Walker, its face hidden beneath a deep hood, and arranged around them were the components for the ritual. A silver bowl filled with something that glowed faintly red, a dagger that radiated dark energy, and suspended from a tripod, a photograph of Patricia's mother. The tether. Patricia felt rage burn through her at the sight of her mother's image being used for dark magic. She was crouched in the underbrush with Vince, watching from a distance as the moon slowly entered Earth's shadow. Wait, Vince whispered, his hand on her arm. Not yet. The eclipse progressed. Shadows crept across the moon's face like a slow-moving disease, dimming the natural light until the world seemed to exist in shades of gray and black. Owen raised his arms, his voice carrying across the clearing. Tonight, my pack, you witness the dawn of a new era. Tonight, I ascend beyond mere alpha, beyond the limitations of our kind. Tonight, I become something the world has not seen in millennia, a true Lycan. The pack howled their approval, though Patricia noticed several wolves who remained silent, their expressions doubtful. The Void Walker stepped forward, and when it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The blood of Silvermoon. That is all that remains. Bring forth the sacrifice. Owen gestured, and 2 Silver Pine warriors dragged forward a struggling figure. Patricia's heart nearly stopped when she recognized who it was. Kitty. No, Patricia whispered. What? She carries Silvermoon blood, the Void Walker said, circling Kitty like a predator. Diluted, distant, but present nonetheless. She will serve as an acceptable substitute if the true bloodline cannot be obtained. Wait, Kitty screamed. What are you talking about? I don't have Owen. You promised me I would be Luna. You promised. You are descended from Gloria Moses' sister, Owen said coldly, which makes you a distant cousin to Patricia. Your blood will work, though it will make the ritual less powerful. He turned to the Void Walker. She'll do, won't she? She will suffice, the Void Walker confirmed. Lucas appeared at the edge of the clearing, his voice ringing out strong and clear. Stop! Every wolf turned to face him. Owen's expression went from surprised to furious in an instant. The traitor's son returns, Owen snarled. Come to watch your alpha ascend, boy. Come to challenge a tyrant. Lucas corrected. I, Lucas Morrison, son of Owen Kane and Gloria's nephew by marriage, invoke my right to challenge for the alpha position of Silverpine Pack. The pack erupted in chaos. A formal challenge couldn't be ignored, not without Owen losing all credibility. But the timing couldn't have been worse. The eclipse was nearly complete, the ritual window rapidly closing. You choose now? Owen roared. You dare interrupt my ascension with this farce? Pack law is pack law, Lucas said calmly. Unless you're declaring yourself above such traditions, in which case you're not a true alpha at all, just a dictator who uses fear to control his wolves. Owen's face turned purple with rage. Several pack members were nodding at Lucas's words, doubt spreading through the gathered wolves like wildfire. Fine, Owen spat. I'll kill you quickly and get back to important matters. But know this, boy, you've just ensured your death is witnessed by everyone you ever knew. That's the plan, Lucas said, and shifted. The two wolves clashed in the center of the clearing, and the pack's attention shifted entirely to the battle. Owen was larger, more experienced, fighting with the brutal efficiency of an alpha who'd held his position for decades. But Lucas was younger, faster, and fighting for something more than just power. Now, Vince whispered. They moved together, two shadows in the darkness of the eclipse, circling around the distracted pack to approach the ritual site from the opposite side. The Void Walker stood motionless, seemingly unconcerned with the challenge happening a dozen yards away. That should have been Patricia's first warning. They were 10 feet from the stone circle when the Void Walker spoke without turning around. The Lycan King. And the Silver Moon Princess. How predictable. Vince and Patricia froze. Did you truly think I wouldn't sense your approach? The Void Walker turned, and this time its hood fell back, revealing a face that Patricia's mind struggled to process. It was simultaneously beautiful and horrifying, human and utterly alien, with those completely black eyes that Lucas had described. I've been hunting Silver Moon blood for 3 centuries. You think I don't know every trick, every strategy, every desperate gambit that bloodline employs? 3 centuries, Vince repeated. You were there. When the packs fractured, when the Lycans fell. I was the reason they fell, the Void Walker said with something like pride. It was so easy, really. Whisper to the right alphas. Promise them power they could never achieve on their own. Watch as they turned on their Lycan protectors, as the great packs tore themselves apart from within. Those black eyes fixed on Patricia. And you, little princess. Do you want to know why your bloodline has been targeted so relentlessly? Because we can heal, Patricia said. Because our magic could undo whatever corruption you spread. Partially correct, but there's more. The Void Walker gestured, and magical energy exploded from its hand. Patricia tried to dodge, but the attack was too fast. She felt the magic wrap around her like chains, pulling her forward into the ritual circle despite her struggles. Vince lunged to intercept, but the Void Walker was ready. Another gesture, and the Lycan King was thrown backward into one of the standing stones hard enough to crack the ancient rock. The truth, little princess, the Void Walker said, dragging Patricia to the center of the circle, is that Silver Moon blood isn't just for healing. It's the key to creating new Void Walkers. Your ancestors were our prison wardens, but your blood? Your blood is also the key to the prison. Patricia struggled against the magical bonds, but they held fast. Around them, the pack was still focused on Owen and Lucas's battle, unaware that the real danger was happening right behind them. For 300 years, I've been collecting Silver Moon essence, the Void Walker continued. Every murder, every drop of blood spilled, has been stored, preserved, waiting for this moment. And now, With a living silver moon and a Lycan combined, I can finally tear open the barriers between dimensions. I can free my brethren from the void and bring about the new age of darkness that the moon goddess tried so hard to prevent. You're insane, Patricia gasped. I'm inevitable. The Void Walker raised the dark dagger. Your grandmother delayed this moment, but even she couldn't stop it. All she did was make you stronger, more powerful, which means your death will fuel an even greater ritual than I originally planned. The blade descended toward Patricia's heart, and then it stopped, caught by a hand that glowed with silver fire. Kitty stood there, her eyes blazing with power that had been dormant her entire life, one hand gripping the dagger's blade despite the dark energy burning her skin. You said I carry silver moon blood, Kitty said, her voice overlaid with something ancient and powerful. Diluted, distant, but present. Which means I can do this. She released a pulse of healing magic so pure, so intense, that it shattered the Void Walker's hold on Patricia. The magical chains dissolved, and Patricia fell free. Impossible, the Void Walker hissed. You're not awakened. You're not. I am now, Kitty said. She looked at Patricia, and there was pain and regret in her eyes. I've been terrible to you, cruel. I let jealousy and fear turn me into someone I hate. But if I can do one good thing, if I can help stop this, her voice broke, then maybe I can die, knowing I wasn't completely worthless. Kitty, don't. Patricia started, but Kitty was already moving. She lunged at the Void Walker, her newly awakened magic flaring bright and desperate. The Void Walker tried to defend, but it had been focused on Patricia, hadn't expected an attack from someone it had dismissed as insignificant. Kitty drove her hand into the Void Walker's chest, right where a human's heart would be, and released every ounce of her silver moon magic in one final, devastating burst. The Void Walker screamed, a sound that seemed to tear reality itself. Its form began to destabilize, darkness pouring from the wound Kitty had created, the dimensional anchor that kept it tethered to this world unraveling. Now, Patricia, Vince shouted, having recovered from being thrown. While it's vulnerable, Patricia didn't hesitate. She grabbed her grandmother's dagger and lunged forward, driving the silver moon steel into the Void Walker's chest right next to where Kitty's hand was still embedded. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Silver fire exploded from the wound, consuming the Void Walker from the inside out. It tried to retreat into the void, tried to save itself by fleeing between dimensions. But Kitty's sacrifice had sealed those pathways. There was nowhere for it to run. This isn't over, the Void Walker hissed, even as its form disintegrated. There are others. More of my kind. They will come for your bloodline. They will finish what I... It never completed the sentence. The silver fire consumed it completely, reducing the ancient evil to nothing more than ash and fading shadows. Kitty collapsed. Her hand burned black from where she'd channeled magic her untrained body couldn't handle. Patricia caught her, cradling her former friend as the light faded from her eyes. I'm sorry, Kitty whispered. For everything. For being weak. For being cruel. For not she coughed, blood flecking her lips. For not being brave enough to be your friend when it mattered. You were brave enough when it counted, Patricia said, tears streaming down her face. You saved us all, Kitty. You were a hero. Kitty smiled weakly. Really? Really? Good. That's good. Her eyes drifted closed. Tell Lucas, tell him I'm sorry too, for everything. She took one final breath and went still. Patricia held her for a long moment, grief and gratitude warring in her chest. Kitty had been terrible to her, had made her life miserable for years. But in the end, she'd chosen to be brave, to sacrifice herself to stop a horror that would have consumed the world. That deserved to be remembered. A howl cut through the night, and Patricia looked up to see Owen lying in the center of the clearing, his throat torn out, his eyes staring sightlessly at the now eclipsed moon. Lucas stood over his father's body, bloodied and exhausted, but alive. The Silver Pine pack stood in shocked silence, looking between their dead alpha, the ashes of the Void Walker, and the two women in the center of the ritual circle. It's over, Lucas called out, his voice carrying across the clearing. The threat is ended. Owen Kane conspired with a Void Walker to gain power, and in doing so, He betrayed everything a pack alpha is supposed to protect. I claim the alpha position by right of combat and by right of justice. He looked around at the gathered wolves. Any who wished to challenge this claim, step forward now. No one moved. Then as my first act as alpha of Silverpine Pack, Lucas continued, I declare Patricia Alvarez and Vince Shields to be friends of this pack, under our protection and welcome on our lands. And I declare that Kitty McAuliffe died a hero, saving us all from a fate worse than death. Her sacrifice will be honored in pack history for generations to come. A few wolves began to howl, and soon the entire pack had joined in a song of mourning for the dead and celebration for the living, of endings and new beginnings. Patricia gently laid Kitty's body on the ground and stood, accepting Vince's steadying hand. Her legs were shaking, her body exhausted from the battle and the magic she'd expended. But they'd won. Against impossible odds, against an ancient evil, against a conspiracy that had been decades in the making, they'd won. What now? She asked Vince quietly. Now? Vince looked down at her, his golden eyes soft in a way she'd never seen before. Now you decide what kind of life you want to build. You're free of the curse, free of the pack that oppressed you, free of the threat that's haunted your bloodline for generations. The choice is yours, Patricia. She looked around at the clearing at Lucas, trying to manage a pack that didn't fully trust him yet, at the ashes of the Voidwalker scattered across ancient stones, at Kitty's body waiting to be properly honored. She thought about her grandmother's cabin in the mountains, about the books full of ancient knowledge waiting to be studied, about the magic flowing through her veins that she was only beginning to understand. I want to learn, Patricia said finally. I want to understand my power, my heritage, everything the Silvermoon bloodline was meant to be. And I want to make sure that what happened to my family never happens to anyone else. She looked up at Vince. Will you teach me? Really teach me, not just the basics but everything you know about old magic and ancient powers? Vince studied her for a long moment, then smiled a genuine smile that transformed his entire face. I thought you'd never ask. And after I've learned? After I've mastered my abilities? After that? Vince's smile turned thoughtful. After that, you become what you were always meant to be. Not an Omega. Not a victim. Not even just a princess. He took her hand, his touch warm despite everything. You become the protector your bloodline needs. The healer the supernatural world has been missing. The bridge between old magic and new. Patricia squeezed his hand, feeling the connection between them, not a mate bond, but something just as powerful. A partnership forged in battle, tempered by shared loss, strengthened by mutual respect. Sounds exhausting, she said with a small laugh. Probably, Vince agreed. But I have a feeling you're up for the challenge. Lucas approached them, still in his wolf form, his eyes filled with questions and regrets and hope for something like redemption. Patricia looked at him, at the boy who'd been her first friend and the man who'd rejected her. At the alpha who'd finally found the courage to stand up to his father. At the ally who'd risked everything to help stop a great evil. She didn't forgive him, not completely. The mate bond he'd rejected still left scars that would take years to fully heal. But she could work with him. Could help him build a pack that was better than the one Owen had created. Could maybe, eventually, find a way to be something like friends again. Thank you, she said simply. For the challenge. For the distraction. For being brave when it mattered. Lucas shifted back to human form, and Patricia politely looked away as he retrieved his clothes. I should be thanking you, he said quietly. For saving us all. For being stronger than anyone ever gave you credit for. He stopped, unable to find the right words. For surviving, Patricia finished. That's what we do, Lucas. We survive. And then we figure out how to do more than just survive. We figure out how to actually live. She turned away from the clearing, from the pack and the ashes, and the memories of the girl she used to be. Vince fell into step beside her, a solid presence in the darkness. Behind them, the eclipse was ending, the moon slowly emerging from shadow to bathe the world in silver light once more. Ahead of them, the path back to the cabin wound through trees and meadows, through territory that was now truly Patricia's home rather than just a place to hide. So, Vince said conversationally as they walked, first lesson tomorrow morning. We'll start with controlled shifting and work our way up to advanced healing techniques. Tomorrow morning, Patricia groaned. Can't we take at least one day to recover? Would the Void Walker have given you a day to recover? The Void Walker is dead. There are others, Vince reminded her, his voice turning serious. You heard what it said. More of its kind, waiting for their chance to break through. Your training isn't just about personal development, Patricia. It's about making sure you're ready when the next threat emerges. Patricia sighed but nodded. He was right, of course. The battle tonight had been won, but the war was far from over. There would always be another threat, another evil seeking power, another conspiracy targeting those with gifts they couldn't comprehend. But for the first time in her life, Patricia felt ready to face whatever came next. She wasn't an Omega anymore. She wasn't suppressed or diminished or made small by others' cruelty. She was Patricia Alvarez, last of the Silver Moon healers, survivor of the rite of diminishment, destroyer of void walkers. She was powerful. She was free. She was exactly who she was always meant to be. And this was only the beginning. Epilogue. 6 months later, Patricia stood in the meadow behind the cabin, her hands glowing with silver light as she carefully healed a young wolf who'd been injured during a training accident. The wolf was from Silver Pine Pack. Lucas had been sending his younger members to learn from her, to understand that strength came in many forms. There, Patricia said, the glow fading as the wound closed completely. Try to be more careful during practice, okay? Your enthusiasm is admirable, but recklessness gets people hurt. The young wolf shifted back to human form, a boy of maybe 14 with awe in his eyes. Thank you, healer Patricia. You're amazing. I'm adequate, Patricia corrected with a smile. Amazing is still a few years of practice away. Now go on, before Lucas thinks I've kidnapped you. The boy ran off, leaving Patricia alone in the meadow. She closed her eyes and reached out with her senses, feeling the life force of everything around her. The trees, the grass, the small animals in the underbrush, the powerful presence of Vince inside the cabin studying one of the ancient texts. Her magic had grown exponentially in the past 6 months. She could heal almost anything now, could sense danger from miles away, could even manipulate the growth of plants if she concentrated hard enough. But more importantly, she'd learned to be happy. Not just content, not just surviving, but genuinely deeply happy in a way she'd never been when she was part of Silver Pine Pack. You're smiling, Vince observed, emerging from the cabin with 2 cups of tea. Must have been a good session. Just reflecting, Patricia said, accepting the tea gratefully. On how different my life is now compared to a year ago. How different I am. You're not that different, Vince said, settling onto the porch steps beside her. You've always been strong, Patricia. You've always been brave and kind and worth 1,000 weak alphas. You're just finally allowing yourself to believe it. Patricia leaned against his shoulder, comfortable in a way she'd never been with Lucas. The mate bond she'd lost had been replaced by something she valued even more. A true partnership built on respect, trust, and genuine care. I got a letter from the Nightshade Pack today, she said. They want to send some of their young healers to train with me, to learn the old Silver Moon techniques. What did you tell them? That I'd think about it. Taking on students is a big responsibility. You'll be excellent at it, Vince said with confidence. You have your grandmother's gift for teaching and your own experience of being underestimated. You'll understand them in ways most teachers never could. Patricia smiled. Look at you, being all wise and supportive. What happened to the terrifying Lycan King, who threatened to throw me off his territory? He met someone who reminded him why protecting others matters, Vince said quietly. Why emerging from isolation and engaging with the world, despite all its pain and cruelty, is still worthwhile. Patricia turned to look at him, seeing past the ancient power and the fearsome reputation to the person underneath. A person who'd been hurt, who'd lost everything, who'd spent 300 years alone because he thought he'd failed the ones who mattered most. A person who was choosing, every day, to believe in connection again. Thank you, Patricia said softly, for everything, for training me, for protecting me, for being the ally my grandmother knew I'd need. Thank you, Vince countered, for being brave enough to claim your inheritance, even when you had no idea what you were walking into. For breaking a curse that should have been unbreakable. For reminding me that some things are worth fighting for. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, probably one of Lucas's pack, out on evening patrol. Patricia's life had changed in ways she could never have imagined a year ago. She'd lost friends, gained new ones, discovered powers she didn't know existed, and fought battles that should have been impossible to win. But sitting here, in the peace of the mountain meadow, with tea warming her hands and a true friend at her side, Patricia realized something important. She'd found more than just survival. She'd found purpose, community, a future worth fighting for. The Silver Moon bloodline hadn't ended with her grandmother's death. It had been reborn, stronger and wiser, ready to face whatever challenges the future held. And Patricia Alvarez, once rejected, once suppressed, once made to feel worthless, was ready to embrace every moment of the extraordinary life ahead of her. She was free. She was powerful. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. And this time, no one would ever make her forget it. Dear viewers, as we reach the end of Patricia's journey from rejected Omega to powerful Silver Moon healer, I can't help but wonder, what would you do if you discovered that everything holding you back was never real, just lies others told you about yourself? Have you ever had to choose between staying safe in what's familiar, or risking everything to become who you're truly meant to be? If Patricia's story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your reflections.